Hey everybody, it's Andrew Brown, and welcome to the free AWS Cloud Project Bootcamp, where we are focused on, what is it, week 6? Let's take a look here and see where we're at the AWS Cloud Project Bootcamp. And we are implementing, deploying containers. So we are on our week 6, technically week 7. And basically we are hitting the midway point, so congratulations for making it this far. But what we'll be doing is week 6 and week 7 together, just because we did not get the recorded video or the live stream prepared in time. And it makes sense to do these together because week 7 is not that much extra work to do week 6, and we can't really do much without having a load balancer in place. So we'll do these together, and that will give us some breathing room in the boot camp here. So originally we were going to use AWS Fargate. And then I realized that Fargate does not have a free tier, which is kind of a bit of an issue if you do not have any AWS credits. And so I tried to engineer a solution that would use the free tier, and we were getting somewhere. However, we can use free tier if we were to use ECS EC2 in bridge mode, but then we wouldn't be able to use AWS VPCs. We would not be able to use ECS Service Connect, which means we wouldn't be able to use service meshes. And to me, that kind of takes away from what I want to accomplish in this bootcamp. So after all that effort, and we're talking like a week effort trying to find a zero spend if you had free tier credits, or sorry, free tier, just a free tier account, not AWS credits. I just said, forget it. We're going to go back to Fargate because the cost of Fargate isn't that crazy. So like if we were to pull up Fargate pricing here. Okay, and we'll just take a look here. So Fargate is based on two components, the CPU per hour and the gigabytes per hour. So if I was to open up ChatGPT and feed it the latest information, it could probably do a calculation for me. So here I am in ChatGPT. And so what I want to do is grab these two values and say, calculate the cost using the 2023 pricing information below. Calculate the cost of running two containers with the lowest memory and compute on ECS Fargate. Okay, and we'll do this, and we'll see if it can do it. It's not necessarily really good at math, but I think it should be safe to do because I've done it before. All right, and so we're seeing this total cost here. Project out the cost for 10 hours, 20 hours, 40 hours, 730 hours, and make a and format it in a table. And so if we run this here, and so the idea here is if we were running two containers, and I believe that is the cost for two containers here because it says 00245 for two vCPUs and two here. And the math looks correct to me. Then if we were running it for 730 hours, we're at $18 spend. So in this project, we are going to need to run for a certain amount of hours. And you're not going to be running it for the entire month. You're just going to be using it and then shutting it down. And so as we're going through this bootcamp, if I go over to AWS Cloud Project Bootcamp here, for this week, we don't need it running all the time. So like when we have the instances here, we can just, or the containers, we can just turn them off. And we don't need to leave them running all the time. Same thing with here, same thing with CloudFormation. And at this point, we'll be able to pull down and tear up all of our infrastructure. So in realistic sense here, I can't imagine you spending more than a few dollars on Fargate here. But worst case, you'd be spending $18 a month. So just consider those costs. And I think it's a lot less, it's an easier path than setting up ECS EC2 where we would have to spin up multiple EC2 instances and a NAT instance, and we have these things using free tier but could run out very quickly and then end up in larger spend than as if we were just to use Fargate. And Fargate's a lot easier to use and is more modern architecture, which is what I want to do. So just consider that. We're going to go back over here, just close this tab out, and we're going to get to it. So I'm going to sign into my AWS account, which I am in. And so, if you do want to go the ECS EC2 route, most of the instructions are in week 6, but the week that we are using for our reference is week 6 Fargate. So this is basically the possible free tier with the NAT instances. But the problem with this was that we hit a hard stop when we got to launching the EC2 instances, because we found out that you could only have 2 ENIs. Those are elastic network interfaces. Those are NACLs, or not NACLs, network NICs, basically network interface cards. You can only have 2 attached to the T2 micro or T3 micro. And that's where we ran into an issue, because I thought that we could attach 3. So we'd have one for the front end and the back end, and one for the cluster. But then when we added Envoy, then I think it might have also wanted its own in that setup. So there could have been 5 in total, but even with 3, we couldn't do it. So it just was a bust, or we'd have to spin up another instance, and then it became a lot more complicated. So you can go down that route, and you could tweak this one to use Bridge instead of that and not use the service mesh at all, but you aren't going to get the full value out of this bootcamp. So that's up to you to decide, but we're going to go over here to our Fargate instructions. And so I wrote quite a bit for this one. And we don't have all of them in here. This is up to the point of, yeah, I just dumped some in there, messy. But this is up to the point of getting them running behind isolate, and then the load balancer, the week 7. I didn't prep the content here because it's so easy that we don't really need to write it out, and you should just follow along. So we'll kind of break that stuff up and do our best there, okay? So, and I'm just making sure my microphone works this time. I can see it moving, so I think we are okay for sound here today. So what I'm going to do, as always, is go to my repository. There I am. That's the fat photo of me. I really got to update it so I have my skinnier photo, but never get around to it. So I'm going to go and make a new branch, as always. So we'll go to branches here. We are going to create a new branch. We are going to go to week 5. Again was the last stuff that we did. And this will be week 6 again for me. And I spent a lot of time on ECS, but I'm really comfortable with Fargate, so it's going to be a smooth ride here. And it'll make all the other weeks easier because I already have a lot of the code for it. So it's going to create that branch, and so we will go back over to our code here. We'll drop down, go to week 6. Oops, sorry, week 6 again. And we'll go ahead and launch Gitpod here, okay? And then we will start to look at some stuff and think about what it is that we need to do here. Okay, great. So our environment is spinning up. So there are a couple of things that we need to do before we even start doing ECS, is that we need a way for us to perform health checks. And a health check is just a way of pinging something and saying, are you working, yes or no? And so there is a health check at the load balancer level. There's a health check at the container level. We might want to kind of have a test or a health check of the RDS instance, because that is always a bit hard. So if we can have those utility tools here, we can utilize them or use them for debugging or things like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and bump up my font here. And so as always, we'll go 20, font terminal, and we'll bring this up to 20. Great. And so we have our nice large fonts. And what I want to do is go over here and take a look at what I was doing. So the first thing I wanted to ensure was that we had some way of testing an RDS connection. And so I guess what I decided to do was make a test script over here. So what we'll do is go into our backend Flask. We'll go into bin, db, and make a new one here, new file, and call it test. And we'll go ahead and do that. And the reason we have this was that if we were to log into the container, we could then perform this command to see if we had an established connection. When we install or we set up the Docker environment, it's not going to have PSQL clients, so I can't just write PSQL, which is, I would have made this a bash script using PSQL similar to the connect, but we don't have this. This will not work on our server. PSQL is not installed, and we don't want to install it. So the alternative was to basically create something very similar here, but instead do a test with Python And we don't necessarily need to make a connection. We just need to return if it was successful. So I have this code here that we're going to go ahead and paste in. Okay, and we're going to not try to get too obsessed about coding because we had a lot of coding in the past ones and there's a lot of moving parts here. So I want to focus more on the cloud services, hopefully. So we have pasted that in. As always, we need to make sure that is executable. So we'll do chmod u plus x backend bin test. Okay, and we'll do that. It says there's no directory there. It's because we need the DB in here. So I'll just do DB here. And I'll bump up my font a little bit more. I know it's a little bit smaller, but it's always because I bump up the interface a bit. And so I keep the font a little bit smaller there when I'm doing that. So we chmoded that, so that's good. The next thing we want to do is see if it works. So I'm going to cd into backend Flask. And what matters here is this connection URL. So right now, this would be the local one. And for production, we really want to use the production one. So for the time being, I'm just going to name this prod. Even though when we push it, we really want it to be connection URL because that's the one we're going to use as the environment variable when we deploy. So I'm going to go here and type in bin db test, enter. And it says unexpected, etc. on line 7. Shouldn't be. It worked, it worked fine before. So let me just shrink this a bit here. Unexpected, line 7. No such file or directory. Oh, because we have a mistake up here. So here I think those 2 extra characters were there by accident. I'm going to hit enter. We have an issue down here. There's a Q there. It's not supposed to be there. This is just poor copy pasting. There's no Q on this, as you can see here. Right? So it's just some bad copy paste here. We'll go ahead and hit up. It says attempting connection. So it's trying to establish a connection. It's not working. And the reason why is that when we updated our scripts here before, I'm just remembering this as we go, we broke this down into this structure here. And if we go to git pod YAML, we forgot to, at least I did, was to update our Postgres so that it actually runs this properly. It's supposed to go here like /RDS, right? And so that's why that it didn't update the security group first to get access. And that's why it's hanging here. So what I'll do is I'll just run these commands manually. So I'll do this copy. I'll do it under the Postgres tab. We don't have to, but it makes things a bit easier. And then I'll just cd into that and we'll do bin RDS update security group rule. And so now if we go back over to here and we hit up and we do our test, it should pass. And so it's successful. So this is great. This is good if we need to log into our container, which we will. And so we'll go here and just change this to be connection URL, because that's what it should be, because that's what we'll use in production. And we don't have to worry about this. We know that it works as expected. Okay. The next thing we want to do is have a health check for the Flask app. And this is very common to have a health check endpoint for your apps. So that is what we're going to do. So in the backend Flask app, we are going to go to app.py. We're going to scroll on down and we're going to just find a place to put it. I like to put it right near the top so I can easily find it. So right above the rollbar test. This one we don't want to use because this is for testing rollbar. In our production code, we probably should remove this. I'm going to just comment it out because we don't need it anymore. But we wouldn't want to use this because this reports an error, which we just want to do a health check, not report an error every time. So we'll go over here and we'll copy this and we'll go back and we'll go ahead and paste this. And so now we have the health check. All it does is say success true and 200. These things don't always look at the contents. What they're looking for is that status code. Sometimes health checks like to also perform a database operation, something that is critical that you need a connection for. I don't want to do that here. I want to keep it simple because I think that it's not necessary to do that. I think that if there was a database connectivity issue, then we would see that with tracing, which hopefully we'll get to do more tracing here. Just depends on our time here. But this will be our simple health check. Going back over to our code here. So we need a new script under this new folder called Flask. So we'll do that. I'll create a new folder and we'll call it, in our bin directory, new folder, and we'll say Flask here. And we'll go back over here. We'll copy the contents of this file. And we'll say new file here, health check. Okay. And I'm going to go make that executable. U plus X bin DB, or sorry, Flask, health check. There we go. So we update that. Looking at our code. So another thing is that I would have liked to use a bash script for this. I would have rather typed in, typed in curl, because curl or wget is a much easier way to do it instead of using Python. However, the Docker file does not install curl or wget. If you can, you should not install those tools, because if someone was able to get into your container, you're making it really easy for them to do abusive things. So we try not to package network utility tools or debugging tools, things like that, into our containers. But in this case, we'll just use a Python script. And so this one's very simple. It's going to do URL lib request. It's going to open that URL. It's going to check if it's a 200. It's going to report a 200, or it's not a 200. One thing that I don't have in here is that it's not reporting an exit code. So that might be something that we want to do. So I'm going to type exit here. And for a successful one, I don't remember what it is. So exit codes, bash scripts. What are their meanings? So 0 is a success. 1 is operation not permitted. 2, no such file, directory. 3. So we want 0 or 1. So 1 would be a failure. Okay. So if this failed, we want this to be down here and type in exit 1. And up here, we want to do exit 0. Why does this matter? Because when we do the health check at the container level, it's looking for the exit code, right? That's what it wants to find out. So we want it to be 0 or 1. If we didn't specify, it would output whatever this would be, and that probably would return a 0 in both cases, because the print probably would result in a 0. But this is more explicit, and that will resolve our issue there. But I guess I forgot to put it in here, or at least it is in my code, because I know if we go back here to here, and I go into these scripts, I'm pretty sure I added it in here. So let's go just take a look to see if that's the case. So we'll go here, and I will go into the bin directory, and we will go into the Flask directory. And yeah, so I did that. And I made mine a little bit nicer here. And actually, there is a little bit extra code. I think I'm going to grab this one instead. And the reason why is because it's very similar, but I just have this try if else. Because I remember that when I was running this, I would get an error that it would say connection refused, and then it wasn't happening on this. It was just that we couldn't establish a connection because the server wasn't running, and it wasn't returning an error. So I had to do a generic exception. I did want to do a very explicit one, this connection refused error, but it just never worked for me. So I had to do this, which is not considered best practice, but it works for what we're doing. So what I'm going to do here is go ahead and execute this. So we'll do that right now. So we'll do bin flask health check. And so here on line 4, it's complaining about the response. Syntax error near unexpected token. Why? Do we have another bad copy paste? Just going to shrink that here. I'm seeing this unable X to open the server. Unexpected token. I mean, syntactically, it looks correct to me. We'll hit up again. Just in case, we did chmod on that, right? Yeah, we did do chmod on that. So I'm not 100% sure why it's all of a sudden not working. Just give me a second, let me figure it out, okay? You know what it is? I think we're missing the shebang at the top here. So, because this error doesn't really help a lot, but I think it's trying to process this maybe as a bash script when it is not a bash script. So that probably will resolve our issue. So if we go here and copy this up here, whoops, paste that in here. And you might not be having this problem. And of course, the copy paste never works as I expect it. And it is allowing it. So I don't know why. I don't like the copy. And it still refuses to let me do it. Unable to read. Please make sure you grant it. I just did. Or maybe I just enabled it. Sorry. We'll go paste that back in there. And so that will probably resolve our issue. I don't think the other one was wrong. I think it just, again, it was a copy paste problem. Yeah, so I just missed that top line there. My fault. We'll go ahead and hit enter. It says connection refused, which is that one that is raising here, and it's doing an exit 1. So this is probably the best way to do it for good error handling. Otherwise, we're going to have health checks with different exit codes that may or may not work as expected, but we want to explicitly make sure we know how this is working. Okay, so this one is set up, so that is good. We'll go back to our instructions. So we did those two there. We are going to need a CloudWatch group, and we should probably create one called Crutter. I don't think I deleted the old one, so I'm going to go do that right now. So I'm going to do it off screen so I can pretend that I've never made them before. So give me 2 seconds. All right, I'm back here. We're going to make our way over to CloudWatch. So we'll type that up at the top here, CloudWatch. And we'll go to Logs. And so in here, we shouldn't have too much logs. That went to Insights. I want to go to Logs. And so we have a few here for our Crutter post confirmation. I have more than one because I did it twice, right? Bako did it and then I did it. So we definitely want to have a general log for our cluster. I would think so. So we'll go ahead and create that. And so we'll just go and paste this down below here. Now I'm going to set the retention to be 1 day. So when you create logs, you can set how long the data should last. In a production environment, we definitely want the logs to last more than a day. I'm just trying to keep your costs low by not having stuff stick around. So if you go down below here, you can see the days that you can change. And so I chose the lowest day, which is 1 day. But yeah, again, it's up to you what you want to set for that. So if I refresh this, we should see that one down there below. You could start with a /. You know, there are conventions to this, but I'm just doing it like that and it'll be fine. I guess we could kind of clean that up. You know what? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just change what I'm doing as per usual, and we will do this again. And I'm going to just put in here /Crutter cluster. Okay, so maybe be a little more explicit about what it is, what certain things are doing. Okay. Oh, sorry, we have to actually create it first. So I just hit up twice to do that. To this one, sorry. And we'll see if this pays off, but I really should have probably spent more time organizing this. I'm going to say Fargate cluster to be more specific. We'll hit enter. And then I'll go up here to the retention days and I'll make sure that it's set to just 1. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here. We're going to give it a refresh and we're going to see what we have. So we have 1 day over here, which is great. And that seems a bit more organized because we do have to add a bunch more CloudWatch logs. And if we can kind of group them together, that might be a good idea. So what I'll do is I'll go back up to here. And the next thing is to create the cluster. And so when we create a cluster, and I'll just show you how to make it through the interface. First, we're not going to actually create it through here. I just want to show you the options. Again, the reason I want to stick with the API as much as we can is because they'll probably change this in a year. Because I know that there is a newer design called something like Cloudscape AWS. Yeah, so there's this design system that might get rolled out at some point with AWS on all of their services. And even though this stuff is really new, this new UI, they might change it all again. So they might have an example here of one. If we go to Foundation or Demos here, right? So it still kind of looks like AWS, but it is a bit different. I personally don't like it. I think that they could have done a better job. Azure seems to do a really good job for utility. GCP makes things look really great and simple. AWS has a lot of problem with designs. I don't know why. But my point is that this could all change in the next year or so. That's why I don't want to focus too much on these UIs, but they are good for exploring the options that we have. If we go to the old one, which in the future you might not be able to see this is how they used to set it up. Now, the way they do it, and I'm in the old UI, is if we go here and create a cluster, we simply choose the name. And it's not asking us if we want it to be Fargate or ECS because it's just going to create an empty cluster probably. So we go here, put our cluster name in, we choose where we want it to be. This stuff doesn't necessarily have to be filled in if you're doing Fargate because you wouldn't fill it in at that point. If you need EC2 instances because you're using ECS EC2, you checkbox that. Here, it'd just be Fargate by default. So whether you want to use Fargate or not, you can always have Fargate enabled. But we'll make it through the the CLI because it's a lot easier. You just do this. So we have our cluster name, and then we have this Service Connect defaults. Let's take a look at what that is. So we'll look up this here, because there's a reason why I did it, but why I don't remember why. We'll say create service or create cluster ECS AWS CLI. We could ask ChatGPT, but it's been really wrong as of late, so I don't want to do that. So we have this over here. And this says, use this parameter to set the default Service Connect namespace. After you set a default Service Connect namespace, any new services with Service Connect turned on are created in the cluster, are added as a client service in the namespace. So what this is doing is it's going to create a namespace, and it says Service Connect, and it's over here, but this actually is Cloud Map. So we'll just go over to Cloud Map for a second. And Cloud Map is a way for us to dynamically name resources. So we already have one here called Crutter from before. I thought I deleted it. So we'll click into it as an example. But the idea is that you'd have this namespace called Crutter or Crutter.local, and you could have services under there. And basically, kind of like DNS records, you could say something, you could add RDS to here. And we might do that where it'd be like rds.crutter.local. And then instead of passing the endpoint URL in your connection URL string, you could pass that instead. And so it's just a nicer way of mapping your DNS records and things like that, or things like that internally within your AWS account. So that's going to be something cool. I'm going to go delete this one because it has to be out of the way. I'm going to also delete this one because that one is old. And so that's what namespaces are. They're going to just be Cloud Map underneath. So again, we will go back over there, but also notice here that we have the option to use container insights. CloudWatch automatically collects metrics about CPU, memory, disk, network. That sounds really good. I haven't played around with that enough to know if that is worth our time. Maybe when we talk to the developer advocate for AWS about this, that it might be something I'll turn on and have more confidence about. But right now, to me, it just looks like some kind of extra spend that I might not want to touch. And I haven't had to use it before, so we'll just stay away from it for now. So this is the command we're going to want to run. So I'm going to go back over here, and we are going to go ahead and spin this up. I could have swore that we have to add logging because we created that log group, but maybe that was for something else. I'm just going to double check here if I'm missing anything here. No, it doesn't look like I am. We can check out settings or configurations here for a second. So that'd be for container insights. Configuration would be the execute command configuration for the cluster. So here, I mean, it could be for this the log setting used to redirect logs for execute command results. Log configuration, the log configuration for the rest of the execute commands. So we could be wanting to use the logging for this stuff here. I don't know. I can't remember. I just know that I made it. I needed that for something. So maybe we'll figure it as we go through this. So I'm going to go ahead here and just type in clear. If we don't need that log group, we'll just delete it. It could have been just for ECS EC2. I don't know. I'll just copy this again. Sorry. We'll paste this in. And so AWS ECS create cluster name, namespace Crutter. We'll go ahead and hit enter. And this should be pretty quick. We can look at what the results return back here. So it's set as active. Nothing super exciting here. I'm going to just hit the X on that. Let's go back to the console and observe what has changed. So I'll make my way over to ECS. And we'll click into Crutter. And it has CloudWatch monitoring on as default. So that's fine, I suppose. Pending because there are no tasks currently deployed. Draining, there are no infrastructure things attached. If we were using ECS EC2, we would be attaching EC2 instances, which you wouldn't want to do through here. It's really hard to do it through here. You'd want to use the CLI for that, but that's stuff for that. Okay, so this is now running. And so this is not going to cost us anything because there's no compute, right? It's going to be the containers that we launched. So no concern about cost right now. This cluster, so the thing is that when we launched it with EC2, ECS EC2, we needed to have a security group because that one would have been for the EC2 instance. And I think I just forgot to remove this out, but we don't need this for anything. So I think we don't need this for now. So we're going to skip this and skip this. We don't need those. So the next thing is let's start preparing our containers so that we can deploy them to Fargate. So what we'll do is go back over here, and basically we're doing Docker now. And so what we can do is we can store our containers on ECR. We talked about this earlier about like Docker Hub and pushing them places. And so this is another place where we can push them. And so you can see that we do already have some here. So I'm going to just clear them out here so we can start from scratch. I'll be back in a second, okay? All right, I'm all cleaned up. So I have no repos here. And the idea is that you can have private or public repos. We want ours to be private. There's no reason for us to make them public. But we go here, we create a repo, we give it a name. And this is, I think, our account ID here. And then it's CA Central. So this thing is pretty standardized. It's very easy to find those. We have this option for tag immutability. Enable tag immutability to prevent images, tags from being overridden by subsequent image pushes. Probably it's a good practice to have this enabled. And the idea is that you're always pushing new tags. I'm going to leave this off because I just want my life to be easy. We can scan on push. So this is a good security feature to have. We can have KMS encryption, which is a good security feature to have. We're not going to create it through here. We're going to create our repo from here. And before we can create our repos, I mean, we don't have to log in to do that right away. So I'm just going to create one first. So we're going to have 3 repos. We're going to make one for the base image for the Python one. We're going to create one for Flask, and we're going to create one for React. So if we go on the left-hand side here, and we go to our Docker file. So we have this Docker file here for our Flask app. And notice that it references this Python at 3.10 Slim Buster. This is coming from Docker Hub. And so the thing is that it's okay to reference things from Docker Hub, but sometimes if you're doing a lot of deployments, Docker Hub will say, hey, you can't pull this for whatever reason because you pulled too many times or there was connectivity issues. There's a variety of reasons why you don't want to pull from Docker Hub when you have your own container registry like ECR. So what we're going to do is pull this one down, this image down, and then push it to our own hosted version of ECR, and then reference that one and replace that here. And that way, I think that will be a lot better because then we don't have to worry about Docker Hub being a point of failure for us. Okay. And we're not probably going to do that for the React side. We probably should do for both, but I'll leave that for homework if you want to do it for the other one. So we'll go over here and we want to create this repository. We're going to set it to mutable so we have a little bit of flexibility for pushing these tags. And we're going to go over here and I'm going to go ahead and paste this in here. And this will create us a new repo called CrudderPython. Okay, and so that created a repo and we got some stuff returned back, which is great. I'm just gonna hit Q there. And so now the next thing we need to do, if we go over back to our container registry, we'll see that repository there. It should be there. And if you go here, checkbox it, and you go to view push commands, it actually gives you all the commands that are nice and easy to do to build it. And for the most part, this is kind of what we're gonna follow, but not exactly. So the first thing we have to do is log in. So we use Docker login, and we provide our username and password to the region. And so this is something you always have to do before you try to push to ECR. And so we could copy and paste that one, but I have this one here where we replace out this with our default variables that we have in our account. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this one here, copy it, and I'm going to paste it in, and that's going to log us in to ECR. And so now we can push containers. Okay, so the first one is a bit different because we need to pull one locally and then push it and do a bit of work here. So what we're going to do here is first set the path for this address here. So this here is just really mapping to this address here because based on convention, it always uses our account ID and then there's the region. So that's all that is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste this in here. And then I'm going to do an echo on the next line and make sure that is set correctly. Okay. And so that looks right to me. If you're not sure, you can copy it and you can go over to ECR here. We'll just close these tabs so we're a bit less confused. And so that matches 1-to-1. So that is a good link. Okay. So now the next thing we'll do, I keep messing up all my, there we go. we want to pull the 3.10 Python Slim Buster. What's kind of interesting here is that if we do Python V, we're running version 3.816. And so just be aware that we're running 3.10. And so some things that we run locally might work differently than what they work with 3.10 or different versions. So just keep that in the back of your mind that Python issues can arise. I don't think we'll run into any issues because I haven't, but I did know building this bootcamp that I did hit certain versions. And so I tried to avoid those issues as much as possible. So we're just going to do Docker pull Python 3.10 Slim Buster on here into this environment. So that's going to pull down that container image. If we did a Docker compose up, it would have also pulled it as well. We can see what images are installed by doing Docker images. So we see the 3.10 Slim Buster. So down below, what we want to do is tag. We want to tag this Docker image we downloaded with our Python directory, say like go here, and we want to give it the same tag on the end, 3.10 Slim Buster. So we'll go ahead and do that and paste that on in. And so it should have tagged it now. I actually never observed tags. I never think about doing that, but yeah, there's one right there. So there it is. So we know that is tagged. And so now what we can do is push it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and push. Great, and so that is push. We'll go over to ECR, we'll give it a refresh. We can see that there is stuff in here. If we click into it, we can see that there's an image. It pushed on this date. It's called 3.10 Slim Buster, okay? So yeah, there we go. That one's out of the way. And so let's go take a look here. And we'll need to go update our Flask app to use this. So what we can do is go over, not sure why I don't see it in the direct instructions. It's probably somewhere in here, but if we go to our Docker file, what we want to do is replace this, and we'll go up a layer here. We'll copy the URI here, and we want to just replace it like that. Okay, and so that should use this version here. Okay, how do we know that that works? Well, all we have to do is do a Docker compose up, and if it pulls it down, it'll work. So I'll do a compose up select services, and I know we need our database, so I'll just uncheck these, and we'll just launch the database and the backend Flask together. And so that should download, and if it runs, then we are in good shape. So we'll just give it a moment to download. I'll see you back here in a moment. All right, so I tried this, and I think it failed. It doesn't say as to why it failed. It does look like it pulled all the images. And of course, we've already pulled this image locally, so you know, technically it already exists on our machine, so it doesn't really have to work hard to do it. So what I'm going to do is type in Docker images. I actually want to explicitly delete that one that is remotely there. So this was this one here. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Just because I want to make sure that for sure I'm downloading it. So we'll say Docker remove this. Does that work? No such container. Maybe it's like images remove. I could use James right about now. I don't remember what it is, so we'll go ask ChatGPT. I really don't feel like looking at the documentation. How do I delete a Docker image based on its name? Just tell me what it is. Docker image RM. Well, that's what I did, right? Did I not? Docker. Oh, maybe it's just image. No such file. Docker images. We'll try this again. Did I do it with the tag? No, I don't have the tag on there, so maybe I need the tag on the end, like this. Okay, looks like it's on tag. We'll do Docker images. Yeah, so that worked. But what we'll do again here is we'll try to do a Docker up. Now, one thing that I was also considering is that when we run that Docker login, it's in the context of whatever environment we do it here. It's not necessarily going to propagate to all these other tabs. So when you go here and you right-click and do Docker compose up, it probably doesn't know the context of that. So what I've actually been doing is I've stopped using the left click here. I've just been typing Docker compose up in a logged in environment that I know that I'm logged in. So let's just make sure that we do that so we can rule that out as a problem that we could run into. So go ahead and copy this. I'm going to paste this in, make sure I'm logged in. I am logged in, and this is where I'm going to be doing Docker. So I'll do Docker compose up. because in that way I know that it'll be able to pull that image without a problem. And we know that we can do select services. I forget already how to do it. Do Docker compose up for select services. I just don't feel like going to the internet and finding out, so we'll do it the easy way. I'm pretty sure you just specify the name after it. Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're going to do. Docker compose up, and we have backend Flask and DB. It's usually good to learn the CLI commands, but sometimes I'm just lazy. So we'll go up here and see what the issue is. Running one of 0 negative count. So I'm going to ignore that and try that again. Finicky, eh? And so this should pull the CRUD database. Now it is saying that the database does not exist, which is totally fine. This might have to do with our connection URL string, but the point is that it looks like it is running. So we'll go here, 4, 5, 6, 7. I just want to do the health check. I'm not worried about why it's not running because my URLs might be wrong. And so my health check is working, right? That's the one that we did there before. So I just typed in /health check. I'll go back over here. And so if we go here, I'm just going to do a command C to kill that. It should bring all those containers down, I think. It does, good. And now I'm going to just type in Docker images. You can see the latest one. Did it download it, or is it just temporarily there? Well, I don't see the image there, but it definitely must be powered by it because how else would it work, right? So I believe our container is okay. So this one is ready to push. And actually, just before we do, I'm just going to double check to see if I made any modifications to that Docker file. The only thing I might have changed is this because I was getting sick of that error. So if we go here, oh, it's already been changed. Docker environment. We're supposed to be Docker debug. Docker environment versus debug. And I think we'll just change it to debug so that we don't have to look at that anymore. Flask debug 0. And we kind of do want debugging because we want to be able to see what we're doing. In production, of course, you don't want hot reloading and all that other stuff. So we'd want to set this to production, and we might have to change some of our code if there's any hot reloading stuff up here. But I don't think there's any settings other than to do take the debug off of 0 or stuff like that. I got in a lot of arguments with Bako about like what we should run this in because I said, you can just run it like this. And he's like, no. You have to run it in G Unicorn or like WSGI, so like G Unicorn. I know this because there used to be one called Unicorn well, it still is for Ruby, and this is like it's like Ruby version ported over here. It's called Green Unicorn, and so these are web servers for Python. And the thing is that Python, or at least Flash, ships with some kind of basic one. It's not considered for production use case. But my argument is that you can use it, and a lot of tutorials do use it, because when you are running a container, you can only have one process, right? And so these things, as far as I remember, is they allow you to run multiple processes, and they have some additional features. And so the thing is that, you know, if you Google any generic advice, they say, don't ever use the basic one, always do this because you need to have something in front of it. But me building web apps for years, the thing is that I know is the thing that's in front of it that's going to make it secure and safe is all the cloud stuff, the ALB, all the other stuff that's there. So I'm not concerned about running this here. We can ask the AWS DA what their opinion is, but I think this is safe. I think this is okay. And a lot of tutorials do that because they know that. But when you Google it, you get generic reasons why not. Like they say you shouldn't do this, but they don't say why. And I think that you can, okay? So this looks fine to me, so I'm happy with that. And we'll go back over to instructions, and I guess we should start pushing and pulling stuff. So we'll have to create a repo just like before. And we'll say paste. And we'll go back over here, and we will set the URL. Hit Q on that, so that cancels out. So we'll go and paste that in, and we have the echo, and it echoes it out. It is, okay, so that one's set. I pasted 2 lines in one go there if that looked really quick. I usually do them one by one, okay? And then we want to build the image. So this is what we didn't have to do for the other one because there was nothing to build. We pulled it. And when we build it, we have to make sure we're actually in the directory. Make sure you are in that directory, okay? By the way, if you are using Docker Compose and it complains about not being able to pull from ECR, make sure you're logged in, okay? Just a reminder. So that's going to go ahead and build that image. It shouldn't take too long. And once that's done, we're going to tag it with latest, push it with latest. Remember James saying earlier that latest is just a tag and that you may not want to use latest as a tag. Probably shouldn't. We probably should version it, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to do latest because when you're using AWS, Fargate, and other services, it will look for the latest tag and we'll always deploy that one, and it makes our lives a lot easier. So it might create more of a DevOps overhead for us if we're not using that tag. Not to say that there's different ways that might be better. It just depends on where you are. We're a small startup crutter, so we're going to move fast and dirty, okay? I'm going to go hit enter here and tag that. We'll go to the next one to push that. And it will push our container, our image, to ECR. And we have one for the front-end application. I'm thinking that maybe we should do this later and first try to just get the service deployed so that we can play around with it a bit. And so we'll just kind of bounce back here and there because I want to make sure you have good debugging skills and understanding how these containers work. So once this is pushed, and it is, what we're going to go do is ahead and try to launch it. So we'll go over here and go to ECS. Okay, and we'll go into our crutter over here, and we'll scroll on down. We have services and tasks. What's the difference? Well, a task, as soon as it executes and it finishes, it kills itself. Whereas a service is continuously running. This is what we want. We want a continuously running a container because we're running a web application. So what we'll do here is go ahead and create a new service. Again, we are going to try to create this through the CLI, but I just want to show you first. We could actually create it through here for fun, actually, but we should really be doing it through the CLI. And again, this might change in the future, and that's why I don't like showing it. But notice we have a launch type. So we have Fargate, EC2 external. Externals for probably EC2 anywhere where you can deploy it on your own servers, like in your own office or on-premise data center. So we have Fargate and EC2, and things really do change when you go between these two options. So we'll stick with Fargate. We have to choose a platform version for EC2. We don't. It's just that. So here we're going to use 1.4. There are differences between these two. I don't know what they are. I can't remember. I did at one point. It's probably in one of my courses, but 1.4 is the latest that we have currently. So that's what it's going to use. We can choose between service and task. We want this to be running like a web app right here. For batch jobs that do the job and finish, that's what tasks are for. Services are great for long-running stuff. We're going to choose our family here. And, oh, well, here's our problem. We have to create a task definition file. So we can't do this yet. We need to do this first. AWS is a lot like that, where it's like you think you're going to do something here, you got to go over there. So what is a task definition? Well, it's basically like our Docker Compose file. It says how do we provision the application. All providers kind of have their own thing. So like if you go to Azure or GCP, they're different. There are tools out there that can take a Docker Compose file and deploy directly. I think it's called Docker Context. So if we go Docker Context here, ECS, there is this way to do it from local to ECS. So there is stuff that you can do. I remember using this last year and I thought it was a great idea, but when I used it again, it didn't work because of different versions of the AWS CLI, and then it was using Copilot and stuff like that. I know Bako got it to work. He really likes it. I vetoed it. I said, we're not going to use it because it's doing a lot of the work for us. It could break at any time, which was my experience before. And you need to learn all the components. So to me, I don't think it's good practice. If you just want to get something up quick and dirty and you're doing this all the time, I guess it's not a problem. And I did say we're doing things quick and dirty, but not that quick and dirty. So I don't want to use this. Okay. But if Bako was teaching it, he'd be doing that. But then we wouldn't have a CloudFormation week or a CI/CD week. We wouldn't really understand what that stuff is. So that's why we're not using it. Sorry, Bako. We'll go here and just take a look. So we have two options: create a new task definition or from JSON. So this is what we're going to be doing locally, is we're going to be looking through that file there. But let's just take a look at the UI because sometimes it helps us to see what options we have. I personally prefer the old UI, but this is the new one. I'm going to expand that so this is centered here. So what do we have as options? We'll just expand this for a second. We name the family name. It's a grouping of the task definition, so that we would just call backend Flask. We have to define our containers. So here, a task, even though we're creating a service, they're both still called task definition files. A service is still a task, it's just a task that continuously runs. Down below here, in a task, you can have multiple containers. So in theory, you could create 2 containers in here. You could have one, which is the backend and the front end. You don't want that because you'd be coupling those 2 together, and every time you deploy them, they're going together, when really what you want to do is be able to scale out just the front end or back end separately. Well, what you would do is include sidecars in here. So like if we are using Envoy, and we are using Envoy, but AWS is going to take care of it for us. If you don't know what Envoy is, it's very cool. Envoy proxy. So this is it's a proxy, and it acts as a sidecar and can do a bunch of different interesting things. But that's something that you would want to have alongside here. And so the containers that are managed in a group here, they would share the same resources, at least for Fargate it would. If you're using ECS EC2, you could specify the use per container. But anyway, in here, you would go here and you'd specify the containers you want. One thing that's interesting is that when you are setting this up for Fargate, you don't choose the host port. So you just have a container port. Now you can specify a host port, but we'll talk about that there in a moment. This is where you'd pass your environment variables. You could upload a .env if you want. You'd have a health check, which we're absolutely going to do. There are some Docker configurations. You can change the command, the entry point, the working directory. We're not going to touch those. But it's pretty straightforward. But it is a different format. So let's go take a look at our actual file locally here. So let me just go find it. All right, so I believe it's over here because, of course, it wouldn't be in our app yet. So I probably have down below here, like creating your task definition file here. I don't trust right here. I don't necessarily trust that this is up to date, but like, yeah, I'm not sure. I was working on this quite a bit. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to pull up another tab here. And I just want to go up 2 levels and take a look at that file in raw, what I actually used as the last one. So in here in AWS, I have a new folder called task definitions, and we have one for backend Flask. And let's just walk through it and take a look here. So we named the backend Flask family. Notice that we can assign an execution role and a task role. A task role is the permissions that the container will have when it's running. Execution role is, as far as I understand, when you are trying to execute the container. There are different network modes, so we can choose between AWS VPC, Bridge, Host, things like that. AWS recommends AWS VPC for security purposes, for easier service-to-service communication, lots of reasons why. The primary reason is that when you do it, you get an ENI directly attached to your service, per service, which is very useful. Here we're going to specify the CPU and memory. If you're using ECS EC2, these would just be integers and they wouldn't be wrapped as strings, and they would be under here per container. For Fargate, we define them up here. You can't just choose whatever you want here. They have to be of particular intervals when you're using Fargate. When you're using ECS EC2, you have more flexibility. You can make it weird numbers. There are mins and maxes, but you can do a lot more stuff. So for ECS Fargate, you have to choose, like, I'll type in here, what is the combination of compute and memory we can use for Fargate? And let's see if it gives us an answer that helps at all. So here's the available combinations. So you can do 0.25 with 0.5, 0.05 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 4, and they have to be like this. If you do this, you say 1 and 8, it will not work. Okay, it's just how it works. So unless there's a bit more to it, but yeah, there's these ratios. And so you kind of are fixed for a particular cost there based on how it is. Notice I'm doing 256 and 512. So that is the lowest we can go. Usually like a Ruby or a Python app needs more memory, like 1 or 2. But we're going to just try to run it at 0.05 for both the front end and back end to get away with it if it's possible. Okay. So going back over here, Yeah, so we just say require compatibility. So this will only work with Fargate. We could even omit this and it should still work. But to say this file is test file specifically for Fargate. We have our container definition. So here we are specifying this URL. So I think in here, yeah, so you'd copy this one and you'd have to replace that there, which is fine. And then down below here, we have our health check. So remember, we wrote this file just recently. So it will execute that health check. And this expects a 1 or a 0 from the exit. So that's why we did it that way. We have our port mapping. So here we have a container port, and that's it. We don't have a host port. So like when you do port mapping, you remember when we did it down below here, we do like Docker, and it'd be like RM hyphen P, and be like 4567 to 4567, or like it'd be like 80 to 4567. We don't do that with AWS VPC mode. It has to do with the network mode. So when we have the network mode set to AWS VPC, all you do is specify the container port, okay? Because the way it's going to work is that when we set up our load balancer's target group is going to point to a port, and that's how it's going to know which service to route to. So just understand that. Now, you could put the host port in here if you want, but it would have to match exactly this one. And so I just leave it out so it's less confusing. Here we're naming the port mapping. We need this for Service Connect. So normally you wouldn't put that in unless you're using Service Connect because it needs this reference name to know how to find this port. We set the protocol and app protocol explicitly here. I think we need that for Service Connect, but we'll talk about that as we go. Here we have our log configuration. So our log group is called Crutter. Oh yeah, we should have really called our thing Crutter. We shouldn't have called it cluster because now this is not going to work properly. So what I'm going to do, this is me trying to be clever, but I'm going to go back over to our log groups, CloudWatch. I'll delete that one because you know what? It has to just be called Crutter. Now we could change it, make it / and stuff like that. I don't care. I'm not going to do that. Maybe we can change that if when we do the CloudFormation, it's a lot easier to change it at that point because we have to tear all this stuff down before we do CloudFormation. So I think that's something we'll figure out later. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this because this is showing proving to be useless. And we'll go ahead and create ourselves a new one here. I'm not even going to do the CLI. I'm just going to call this Crutter. And I'm going to just say after 1 day, and we'll create that. Okay, so we'll go back over to here. So that makes sense. Then we're passing in our environment variables. So these are, none of this stuff is really that secret, so it's okay for us to pass them this way. Noticing I'm putting wildcards on here. That means it's going to be open to the internet. You shouldn't be doing that. We're doing that because we are testing this and we will have to retroactively change this. We're not going to leave it this way. This is bad. Do not leave your origins open to the internet. Mine is CA Central. You have to change this with yours. Obviously, all these values you have to change for yours. Please don't put my, I guess you can't, but like, you don't want to put my cognito pool in there by accident. For our secrets, we're going to store those in parameter store. AWS has 2 different services, Secrets Manager, Parameter Store. Secrets Manager is easier to use. It integrates with a lot more services with ease, but it costs money. It starts at least $1. I don't want to spend any money. Parameter Store is not that harder to use. And in this case, it integrates very easily. Not in all cases. When we get to CloudFormation and other services, you'll see what I mean. But for this, we're going to keep it very simple. So we have to make sure that these exist first. We have to make sure that these 2 IAM roles exist first. So that's what we're going to have to do first. Notice how we keep getting farther away from our target because there's a reliant things. It's just how it is. So we will go back over to our code here. And so we should have in here a couple policies. So did I save them here on the left-hand side? I really should have. Go to AWS, policies, and I made one here. I guess I didn't save the other 2, but they are here in the code. So what I'm going to do is just zoom out a bit and see what I got. So I have one here for the execution role, which is this one. And I suppose we can do it that way. I'm just trying to decide here. You know what? I kind of want to extract this out. I know we did it this way, but I'll just take it out. And I just want to put my policies under here. So I'm going to say here, call this one CRUDder, or it's like service execution policy.json. I'm going to paste that in. And we're just going to take out all that extra junk in here, all these double forward slashes or backslashes. I'm just using down below here. This is like Vim. You can delete them out manually if you have to do it that way. I'm just going to do it the fast way. And it didn't work. Let me try that again. There we go. So yeah, you might have to manually do it. But the idea here is, and I just need that there. Actually, no, hold on. I need that. And I go down one here, fix that there. There we go. So what is this doing? It's allowing ECS tasks to assume the execution to allow to launch tasks. It's very simple. So I'm going to go back over to here, and I feel like we could just pass the policy along as JSON. So let me just take a look here. See how we can do that. Pass JSON policy document, pass JSON file for, what's the command called? Already forgot. Let's see if it can give me an easier answer to do this. Can I just pass a file like that? Can I? That'd be nice. I have an AWS CLI course, and I probably documented that. So if we can do that, that'd be a lot nicer. So I'm going to give that a go. So I'll just type in clear here. And what we'll do is go back over here. I'm going to copy just this part here, paste that in. And then for the file, we'll say file : //. Actually, I'll go back a directory first. And I'm going to copy that again. And we'll paste this in again here. And I'm going to do file : AWS policies service execution policy.json. Let's see if it takes that. Fingers crossed. There we go. So created that. I definitely prefer doing it that way. We'll go back over to AWS. We'll confirm that it exists. Always good to double check these things. We'll go over to roles. We created a role, right? Yeah, we did. And we called this one CRUDder. Notice I did all title case. When I first started using AWS, I tried to have everything one way, and AWS beats you around the head and you just kind of give up. So I apologize for the mixed case. I just don't care anymore. It's not worth your time or effort. Just make sure that they generally have some kind of convention. But you know, if you can't stick to it all the time, that's totally fine. So we also need our task role. So we'll go back over here and we'll scroll on down. I do have some additional stuff in here. So like, oh, you know what? In this task, I think that we have to have get parameter, because in order for this to work, it has to pull down the parameters. So I'm almost certain that it has to do that. And I put it there. So yeah, you know what? We'll have to go back and delete that. So we'll go here and we'll delete this. CRUDder. I'm pretty sure it's this file that needs to be able to do it, not the task, but the service execution. Because at that time, it will pull down those environment variables and it needs access to do that. So in this, what we'll do is update it, and we'll just add another statement here. So we'll do comma, colon, and then we have this stuff here. So I remember I did get parameter, and then I wanted get parameters. So this is really the second one. I know this is a bit of a mess. I apologize. But I'll go ahead here and copy this part of the statement. And we'll go ahead and paste this in. And so just make sure that you replace this with your AWS account ID. Make sure that you replace anything else that you have to, but it should just be this and the region. So make sure you replace those, okay? And so that should be good. So I'll go back and hit up here and create that service execution policy again. It's saying this is malformed. Okay, well, what doesn't it like? So we'll just double check here. The actions are fine. The resource is fine. What's this doing here? That's fine, right? Just to make sure this is a bit more readable, I'm going to do this C# style indentation. And we'll do that and just rule out any issues here with indentation. There's a double, that's why. Okay, so I'll put those back like that. I like it like this. Principal. Oh no, it's still missing one, so maybe one there. And then this one matches there. This one matches there. This one matches there. It looks fine. Try this again. When calling the create role has prohibited field resource. It might be because this doesn't exist yet. Yeah, you know why this is failing? It's because we've yet to make our parameters. So maybe that's what we should do first. And I actually have already created mine, but I'm going to go ahead and delete them. So I'll be back in a second, okay? All right, I'm back. So what we're going to do is go to Systems Manager, because that's where parameter store lives. So type in Systems Manager here, and then on the left-hand side, we'll have parameter store. We scroll on down here. It's under Application Management. And so in here is where we can create our parameters. So if I create a parameter, I'm just showing it to you. We're not going to create it through here. But you name a parameter. So I can say CRUDder, app, front end. And the thing is, it uses this / thing similar to CloudWatch logs so that you can query for that. So if you wanted to say, get me everything under this, like under everything under here, like we'd say AWS access key. Everything that starts with this, then that make that easier. We have two modes, standard and advanced. We really only need standard. We want things to be secure strings so that people can't see what they are. Strings are just plain. String list is a list of strings, and secure string is like, make sure it's encrypted, at least server side anyway. So what we'll do is we'll go back over here and we need to go execute those. So if we scroll up here, we have these values here. And so it's important that we abstract out all of these values into environment variables, because not all of these are set as environment variables. And what I mean is that if we go over here and we go down to our Docker Compose file, notice here that some of these are, maybe they're not hard-coded. Let me double check. So let me see here. It was access key ID. Well, of course we wouldn't see that there. That makes sense because we don't, well, actually we do pass along here, don't we? Yeah, we do right here. That one is already set as environment variables. I'm just looking for ones that we might be missing. So connection URL is up here. So that one is hard-coded because it'll be the prod one that we're going to use. Rollbar access token, did I hard-code that one? No, I seem like I did a really good job here. I'm just double-checking. OTEL exporter OLP headers. So that one is, I think the only one we didn't set because it's this thing here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just make sure I set this one. So I'll go down below here. I'm going to type in export. And I'll paste that in here. Whoops, clear. Export equals, and then we'll grab this here as such. Hit enter. I'm going to echo it. It's not a big deal for me to show you this one because, again, you can't do too much damage to my rollbar account. Or sorry, not my rollbar, but my Honeycomb account. And I don't... Oh, you know what? We need a $sign in front of there, right? Yeah, so that's printing out correctly. So that's all we need for those to be set. And so we can go here and copy these one by one. So I'll copy this one and paste that in. I'll copy this one. And paste that in. I'll copy this one and paste that in. I'll copy this one and paste that in. And you know what, like we are setting that task definition, or sorry, that task policy. And so in that sense, it should be able to pick up the access key in secret. At least that's where I would expect it to be, but I'm not exactly sure how to do that. So right now we're passing these over. And this, again, this is a question I'll probably go ask AWS saying like, hey, is there any way I could just not set these, or do I have to set these? And this is something I don't have a lot of confidence about because it's usually not a good practice to set these here, but we are pulling them down via parameter store, so it's not that bad. We'll go over here and go to parameter store, and then we can see the values we have. So here they are. They're set to the standard tier. They're secure strings. I'll show you one that I don't mind showing you, which is this one. Notice the value is obscured. Click into show. See that it's set. Go check that all of these are set correctly. Go check the names. Go check their values and make sure they're correct, okay? So if they're not, you're going to have some trouble. So what I'm going to do is go back over here, and we can hit up and get back to where we were doing the creating a role. And we'll hit enter and see if it works now. And so it's still failing. Okay, let's go take a look at the execution role policy and see what it's complaining about. So let's double check to make sure this is correct. And also another thing is making sure we're in the right region. I'm in CA Central. These look right to me. So yeah, last modified, Crutter, backend Flask, ADARN, AWS, SSM, CA Central 1. I'm going to double check my, this is correct here. That should be right, yeah. Malformed document policy when calling the create role operation. Okay, so what I can do is if I have something that's malformed, I can just go ahead and copy this here. We can go over to IAM and let's just try to create it manually and see what happens. Because that way we could kind of debug it. It might tell us what's wrong if we go create a policy. I'm not actually trying to create a policy. I just want to see where my problem is. We'll paste this in. And it should tell us there's a problem. So there's 2 errors down below. We'll click down below. Missing resource, add resource or not resource element in the statement policy. Oh, maybe this one's supposed to have one. Identity policy does not support the principal element. Oh, right. I apologize. Okay, it's because this is not the same thing. All right, so this is the identity policy, and this is actually the something else. What I'm trying to say here is, like, if you go over to a role or a policy here, let's just click into one as an example. As far as I understand, we have permissions here, and then we have, I thought it was over here. Oh, sorry, no, roles, sorry, roles. If we go to roles here for a second, I'm looking for one that I created myself, like this one down below. In here, this is the trust identity. So this is that thing that we said, like, who's allowed to do what. And so that goes there, and that makes sense that this goes here. And then there's actually the permissions. And so I'm trying to mix 2 documents together in a way that doesn't make any sense. So just give me a second, okay? I have to go correct this. All right, so I thought about it, and you know what we need to do? Because it looks so darn similar, I get them mixed up. But this is creating the identity statement here, which is fine, or the, whatever you want to call it, the trust relationship. And so what we really need to do is we need to create ourselves a new policy and then attach it. So that's what we're going to do. And this is basically what this command does. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this to make our lives a little bit easier. And so you can just kind of copy paste along a little bit better, maybe. I'm looking for the policy here. Create IAM role. Not searching how I wanted to, but we found it anyway. So this part's fine. So we want this to still happen as it is. So I'm going to go back up here for a second. And we want this line here to make our lives a bit easier. Okay. So that's fine. But what we want to do is actually create a new policy, and that's what we want this for, that stuff. So what I'm going to do is go down below here, copy this here. We will go up, and I'll do this here. Whoops. And instead of having the policy document on here like this, I can just take this out here, and we can just have something similar. Take that out like that. So this would actually be this. service execution policy. And then up here is actually the assume role. Okay. And then once it's attached, then what we need, or once we create it, then we need to attach it. So then we go here, and then we have this command here. And so this one is going to take the ARN for this one. So we want to attach this role here, and we want to call this one policy. And then I'll go down here, and then we want to attach it to this role here. Okay, and then down below here, we need to change this. It was Amazon execution policy, attach policy, because now we need the policy ARN from this one. So I'll just take this out here and say policy ARN. And then this one will be creditor execution role like that. Yeah, okay, great. So I'll go ahead and commit that. Apologies. And then we'll go back to execution. Okay, and so I'll go back over here, and what I'll do is actually rename this to be assume service assume role. And then in here, I'm just going to keep the same name here, copy execution role. Okay, and so then I'll just copy the contents here and paste it in. And then what we'll do is we'll take out the first part here because that makes no sense for obvious reasons. I assume the version will be the same for both of them. And then up here, we'll leave the bottom one. So I'll go here and take this one out because that makes no sense. Yep, so that should be what we want. Okay, and so now what we can do is go back over here. I'm going to grab the first one and see if that executes, no problem. Clear, paste. Oh, come on. I'm not sure why it's executing that way, in that weird way. It looks fine to me. AWS policy, service assume role. Just make sure that is correct. It's like it's hitting auto enter when I do it, which is kind of frustrating. Just bump down the font so I'm having an easier time. Oh, it's only copying the last part. Give me a break. Copy, copy, copy. Paste. Why is it doing this weird space? Okay, I'll just paste it here for a second. It's having a real hard time today. It might be because we want to wrap this in parentheses. Like this. I'm going to just make all the other services in line because I don't want to deal with this headache. This sucks. Okay. I thought like this would be a smart idea to do, but apparently not. Unexpected IO character 97 for the array. Well, I guess we can't. Did I save that file with it in here? Yeah. Sorry, folks. I'm a mess. I know. Cut. Save. Paste. Enter. There we go. Okay, and then we'll go down to the next line here, and we want to do this one. Don't take this here or there, sorry. Paste that in, hit enter. What doesn't it like? Maybe we need to wrap that one also in quotations like this as well. Unable to load param file. No such file or directory, AWS policy, service execution policy. Missing the JSON on there. We'll hit up again. We'll try that again. No such file. No, when calling put role policy, the operation role with creditor service execution role cannot be found. All right, I'm getting sick of doing this. So what I'm going to do is just do it manually, okay? I don't want to goof around here all day. So we'll go back to our rules and we will look for our execution one. I apologize. It's just sometimes things don't go the way I want it to. And I thought that would be super easy. Did it create the service in here? Where is it? CRUD or where is it? There it is. Okay, we'll click into it. I'm just going to attach an inline policy here. And we're just going to go here and type in SSM. For resource manager, or what am I doing? Remove that. Try this again. Add a permission. SSM. I want systems manager. Sorry, systems manager. SSM is, it used to be called simple systems manager. That's why I'm typing that in, but apparently that doesn't map there anymore. Here we want get param. And we want get parameters. So those two. We'll drop this down. We'll say a specific resource. I'll add the ARN. Here I'm doing in CA Central 1. And what we want here is this credder back in Flask like that. So I'll go over here and notice that this is going to be very similar. It says without the leading slash, we'll take that out. And then we get this. This looks exactly like this here, right? And so I'll go ahead and hit add. We don't need any request permissions. I'll hit review policy. So that one should be good. I'm going to make sure I match the name as we expect it to be. So it needs to be this name here. CRUDder service execution role. Make sure that matches. That matters. We'll go ahead and create that policy. When we do CloudFormation, we will make all this stuff CloudFormation. We'll end up tearing all this stuff down. So don't worry about the fact that we're using inline stuff. So this one now exists. I called this one role. Oh, freaking jeez. I should have called the policy. Okay, so, or maybe I did call it policy. Hold on here. Let's go to the role. CRUDder. I have it backwards. I'll delete this. I'm so sorry. I said delete. What am I doing? Who am I? Delete. What a mess. Take out that space. Let's just create it manually. So here we want to give access to ECS tasks. So we'll drop down here, type in ECS. Maybe Elastic Container Service. This is for allow ECS tasks to call services on your behalf. So it should be this one here. We will go next. Here we can attach policies. We will go ahead and create a policy. We will choose the service again. Systems Manager. I will go here and choose parameter. So we got get and gets. We'll go drop down here. I will add the ARN. I will say CA Central 1. We want this to be CRUDder, backend Flask, asterisk, add it, next, CRUDder, execution policy, create policy. I'll go here. I don't remember naming it. Did I name it? Oh, we're under policy. Okay, that's fine. We'll go here. Where's the role? Where's the role? I'm losing it here today. I'm losing it. Did I not name it? Where did it go? Okay, we'll create it again. Oh, you know what? It's still over here. It's because we didn't actually create it yet. Okay, great. I thought I was going crazy, but I'm not. So we'll type in CRUDder. We need to refresh here. CRUDR execution policy. We'll go next. We'll name it. We'll make sure it's called this. We'll do that. I'll say create role. And notice we'll go double check, make sure it's right. So we'll go into here. So get params, that is right. We'll check the trust relationship, that is right. Is there anything else I need to set here? Because I know at some point I had to do like these channels here, but that's for the task role. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the task role. This should just work as expected. Just copy paste this. Let's make our lives easy. Screw whatever I was doing there before. If I had it all perfect, then that'd be fine, but I apparently don't. So that's going to create the task role. We need to create this policy. This policy allows us to use sessions manager, I believe, because I remember create control channel, all that stuff is for that. We're probably going to need it if we want to use sessions manager. I can't remember if this is for the ECS EC2 or Fargate. I'm just going to copy it in. It's not going to hurt it. We'll go hit enter. We'll go ahead and attach that. Will we put that? Did it get attached? System access policy. Oh, it did right here. So it probably already attached it. Let's go back over to that one there and check. CRUDR. Refresh. Task role. Yeah, and there it is. So it's attached. It says customer inline, so it's maybe created as inline as that one command there, which is fine. I don't care. And so we need to attach a couple ones. We want to give it CloudWatch full access so that it can access CloudWatch. That should be a bit more locked down, but again, I just want this working. We can fix this when we do CloudFormation, okay? And then over here we have to be able to write to the daemon. If we're going to use X-ray, then we're going to need that. So we've attached those two roles there. We'll go back over to IAM. We'll double check what permissions are here. Just refresh here and see that they're attached. So here they are, SSM, this one for put segments, all this stuff for that, and then full access here. Again, we could lock this down to specific CloudWatch logs, which would be good, which would be best practice for security. Okay, so now we have that stuff all set up, and so we should be able to go ahead and create our task definition. If you remember what we're even doing before, because I kind of forgot. So what we'll do is go over to, well, we don't need to create a task definition through the UI. We can create it in the CLI here. So let's go take a look at our task definition. Did we make one here yet in the left-hand side? No, we did not. So we'll create a new folder here. I'm going to type in task definition as the folder, definitions. I think that's what I called it. And we'll look for some code here. Yeah, it is. And so we have the backend Flask one. I'm going to copy and paste this. You have to substitute this one with your proper values. What did I call this file? This is called backend Flask. That's all it's called. New file, backend Flask, JSON. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. So notice that these are set to my AWS account ID, my region. Make sure you replace it for yours. Up here, I have these values that I brought in. These are the same values that are in my Docker Compose file. Carry those over into their appropriate place. Don't use my values, use the ones that are for you. We will change these to later. We're not going to leave the origins open. This is fine. This is all fine. Remember to update this. This is the actual image that's in ECR. So if we go over to ECR, into the repositories, right? It's going to be this address here. So grab that address, put it in here. Up here, these execution roles, you need to grab those ARNs. So you're in the ARNs. And so somewhere here, if we go back to right here, here it is right there. So copy that over for both of the appropriate ones and put the execution role for the execution role, the task one for the task one. And so you'll end up with a file like this. Okay. So now we can go down below here and run it. So I'm just looking for it here. Register a task definition. So once you create them, it's really easy. If you ever want to update this file, you just update the task definition and then keep putting this in and it keeps updating it. So we're going to do the backend one because that's all we've done so far. We're going to hit enter. And it's outputted a bunch of stuff. So it doesn't like something in the file. It'll tell me when I hit enter here. And it's going to say, hey, you did this wrong. I don't like that. No such file directory backend Flask. So let's just make sure this is all named right. I'm notoriously bad for spelling stuff. So we'll go here and rename. And there was a spelling mistake there. Definitions, is that even spelt right? It's not. Okay. And so I'll just go up here. Sorry. Not a code trap, just me spelling something wrong. And so that test definition now exists. We're going to go ahead and go check it. Whenever you do something, go double check, triple check to make sure the thing is where you think it is. Cloud is funny. Sometimes things say they're there and they're not. So we go here back in Flask. We can see that it's saying revision 10. The reason why it's saying revision 10 is because I had one before called this. When you create task definitions, it's filtered on active, but these are old ones that I've had. So if I start pushing to it, it'll just continue on from that number. You're going to see number 1 or 0 or something. I'm on number 10, but it doesn't show the previous revisions, because if I go here, you can see the old ones or there. So just be aware that's why that's like that. We'll click into it. You know, we can confirm the task is the task, the execution role is the execution role. We didn't specify the operating system. We could have been explicit and said Linux, but I didn't. I just don't care. We can see the size of the task. We can see the container that's in it. We can click into that. We can see stuff that is being set for the environment variables. It's not showing the secrets in there, okay? We can see what the health check is. It's going to run this. And this is fine because in the Docker file, it puts it in a folder called backend Flask, so that makes sense. You can see if you overridden anything. So that stuff should be clear. You can see the JSON here. If you need to confirm it, you could download it, whatever. We don't have storage volumes attached here. That's totally fine. Because if you needed a storage with it, I guess you could put it on there. I'd imagine maybe EFS, because if you're doing serverless containers, usually you use EFS, Elastic File Storage. So that all looks good to me. That means we can go ahead and launch a container. So let's go do it manually via the CL or through the console, and then we'll do it via the CLI, and then we want to continue to do it through the CLI as most as we can. So I hit create here. Sorry, just to make sure it's clear, we're on the cluster. We click into our cluster. We say create under the service tab. Okay, so our launch type is going to be Fargate. We'll use the latest. It'll be a service. We'll choose our family, backend Flask. The latest version. Mine happens to be 10. Yours would not be that. The service name I'm going to call is backend Flask. For our replica version, we have desired 1. Our deployment options, we'll leave that alone. We will connect this in a second. I just want to leave it off. But generally, we want to be using Service Connect, okay? We have our networking options. Make sure they are where you expect them to be in the default VPC, which is what we're doing them in here. If we're doing ECS EC2, we had to change a bunch of the stuff around. We had to do a lot of work. We need to have a security group here. So that's something that we didn't create. We can create one on the fly here. I'm going to go back to our instructions and take a look at what I did here. So here we have the CRUD service. It's going to create it for the default VPC. And it's going to authorize for port 80, which is actually not true because, well, actually it is fine. We can do it that way, but really we need is port 4567. Let me think about this. Well, there's no IP address, so it doesn't actually matter what we do here. So I do want to create one, so that's something I definitely want to do. We need to get that default VPC. Somewhere in here, we have default VPC. Default VPC. Where is it? How do we get our default VPC? I must have deleted it out of here. That's the problem. We had it before, so I just have to go back to my old code here, and we'll go grab it, and I'll just throw that in there. So in this week here, in week 6, you don't have to scroll and find it here. I'm just going to go get it and then paste it in our new one. And we'll go into our instructions in the journal here into week 6. Up here. So, because we needed it for the NAT, but we actually don't need that there anymore. So I want to grab, no, where is it? I probably want this one, so I'm going to grab this one for sure. And I'm just going to put this here. So we can grab the default subnets. But we also need here is the default VPC. Here it is. There we go. It's not hard to get the default VPC. We could have just went into the UI, but again, I'm trying to not rely on the UI so much. Okay, so if we go here, copy, paste this in, it returns the default VPC. Very simple what it's doing, right? Describe VPCs, find the one that's default, whether it's true, return its VPC ID. Not complicated. Okay, so if we go back to what we were doing before, which was creating the security group, and we'll go down to, where are you here? This one here. We don't need to set any inbound traffic, okay? So I'll go here and hit enter. And so now it created that security group. And so with that security group created, we can go back over to our service that we were creating in the terminal here. And we can drop it down and it shows up right here. So I'll checkbox that on. And so that's the one we're going to be using. This has a public IP address. So we do have outbound traffic. Now that I'm thinking about it, if that's the case, we can actually access that. When you're using ECS EC2, this wasn't here, and so I had to shell in to find out if things were working. But I'm just trying to think here. If it starts up and it's on 4567, would it automatically route to port 80? I don't know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and run the next command, which is that's the old one here, to authorize port 80 for this and see if that's all we need. I just can't remember. So I'll open up port 80 on that security group. We'll double check that after it's deployed. But I'll go here, and we don't want load balancing right now, but we'll do that at some point. We'll go ahead and create this service. And so that's going to go and create that service. We're going to refresh here, and it should start showing up at some point here. Ugh, I didn't click on there. And so notice it says deployments and tasks. Sometimes when this thing fails, you can go to deployment events and see information there. This will tell us what's going on here, if it started, if it ran into some failure, if it ran out of resources. A variety of things could throw up here, but you want to go here and see when that happens. Also, when it does spin up, we'll see logs in here, but we are waiting for this to start. And it will take a little bit of time because it's going to wait for the health check that we configured. But I'm going to just sit here for a little bit. It says it's active, so that's good. Go back to this tab here, refresh. Still says it's in progress, so I'll be back here when we have a status change, okay? All right, so I don't see anything still yet. It says in progress, but down below here, notice that it looks like the tasks are starting over and over again. So right now we are under the service tab, and if we go to configuration tasks and we scroll on down below, notice it shows nothing running, but if we go to all, we can see previous tasks that have started. And so this is a great way to find out what's going on. So why did it keep starting and stopping? Well, it's trying to launch one, but something is clearly wrong. So if we click into an old one, and you do have to do this quite often actually, it'll say, so unable to pull secrets or registry, resource retrieval failed, unable to retrieve ECR registry, service call, retried, access denied, user for this is not authorized to perform get authorization token because no identity-based policy allows for get authorization token. That's kind of interesting because I did this before. I don't remember getting this error, but this really has to do with our permissions of what we are able to do and not do. So I guess that's something we're going to have to fix. So let me think about it, okay? Okay, so this shouldn't be too hard because it's saying it's for the CRUD service execution role and it wants this. So what we'll do is we'll go over to IAM. Again, I don't remember having to do this before, so I'm not sure why it's not an issue now, but that's totally fine. Or it is an issue now, but we'll go here and type in CRUD, and we'll go down below and go here, and I'll add permissions, and I'll attach an inline policy, because we already made one manually, so we should just modify this one instead of creating all these darn inline policies, and I will go here, and we will give it a second to load. I'm going to go edit that policy. And so I want to add in an additional one here, and this one is going to be for ECR. And so ECR, that doesn't always work, so we'll type in elastic. We have container registry. It wants, what does it want? It makes me think that my registries were public before, which I'd be really surprised if they were, but if that's the case. So ECR get authorization token is what it wants. So we'll type that in. We'll click that. And it's not asking for a particular resource, so that's good. We'll say review policy. And we'll save the changes. And so that should take effect as soon as the next instance is deployed. And so a lot of times you're just waiting for the next one to occur. So if I go back over to my containers, oh, this is a mess up here. We'll click into cluster here on the left-hand side. We'll click into there. We will go back into here. And if you want to just be sure that it's going to launch a new one, but just to be sure, I'm going to hit update service. And I'm just going to say force a new deployment. And we'll go down below and we'll hit update. So it's good to know all these kind of things in the CLI, but in practice, when we deploy it and it's working, we'll deploy it once and won't be doing so much work there. It is saying it's active, so that's a good indicator there. We go down below and I don't see any running just of yet. So you can just keep refreshing here and see when one starts popping up here. Right now they're stopped. We can also see like how long ago it started at. Doesn't tell us here. That doesn't help me. But I'm waiting for a running task here. So there it is. It's running. I'm going to click into it right away. And that way we can capture that information. So we will see what happens here. So this one, it's provisioning. So we'll wait a little bit here and then see what happens, okay? It's in pending, so it might work. Oh, no, we got the error again. So now we have create stream has retrieve one times, access denied, is not authorized to perform create log stream. So it wants to create a log stream called backend flask. Grutter. Sure, I thought we gave it access to create stuff, didn't we not? I guess not. So just to make our lives a bit easier, I'm just going to attach a permissions here, attach a policy. We'll just say CloudWatch. Full access, let's go for it. Again, we should lock it down, but we'll do that when we do CloudFormation. So now that it has full CloudWatch access, we'll go back over to ECS and we will go to our services up here, into Crutter. We'll click into this one. And now if I go to configuration and tasks, well, we just go to service, the tasks. And we're just waiting for a new one to spin up. So if I keep refreshing here, it eventually will appear. Might take a little bit of time, but we'll wait a second. Okay, so a couple of minutes. Now we have a new one that's going. So I'll just make a new tab here. And we'll see if it picked up the new permissions. Never had this much trouble the first time around. Pull image manifest retried resolved. 403 forbidden. All right. Let me just look up some stuff. So ECS execution task access to ECR. We gave it that. So apparently it wants all these things too. Whatever. Let's give it what it wants. So we'll click into here. We'll give it a second. We'll hit edit. I'm just going to go to the JSON here and it wants more stuff. So I'm just going to give the square braces like this. Paste that in. And then we'll hit enter. It has a warning here. What's the warning? Line 215. Why? What's the problem? No comma here. There we go. Review the policy, save the changes. And then this time, it should work. So we will go back over to ECS. And, oh, is it running? So I don't know if this one has picked up the changes yet. It might be the next one that works. So we'll go to this one because I don't necessarily trust this one to report clearly. So if this one fails, it might be the next one that picks up those permission checks. Oh, it's running. Haha, so we gave it the right permissions. We'll go back over to Crutter and their cluster. We'll go down below here. It says that it's running. Good. Now, is our health check passing? It says 3 failed deployments, 1 completed. It doesn't seem like it's shutting down again. We'll go to configuration tasks. It said it was running, right? Running, desired state running. Health status check unknown. Why? We put a health check in there. That is a surprise to me. So we go here. No issues. Good question. Why is their health check not working? And so in this case, we'd want to get access to the container to find out. So that's what I would want to know. I don't remember, for some reason, how to connect to containers. Give me a second to figure it out, okay? All right, so there's this article. There's a few ones that you can do, utilize to do it. Like there's like a sessions manager plugin and stuff like that. But like when you look it up, and the first one you'll get is actually towards the cloud, which is fine, but it's showing for a .exe, which to me is not Linux, so I'm not going to use that as a solution, but it's still a great article if you're on Windows. I am on Windows, but I don't want to connect there. I want to connect via Gitpod. There is a command called ECS execute command, and this might install the Linux one. You do have to have particular permissions installed for the policies, and I think we did do that because I did those open channel things. So it's like open channel. So we set those at the execution policy. So we did do that already, I believe. So that is in good shape. There is some extra stuff all in here, and I don't know if we need to do all this stuff. There's just a lot going on in this article. Because I just want to get in there and see if I can get connect to it. So what I'm going to try to do is just try to use this command and just see if it fails. But I don't want this one. I want to get into Bash, and I saw one in here for Bash. Here we go. And so that's Nginx. I don't want Nginx. I want to connect to the service that I have. So I'm going to see if this works. It might not work. And I'm not going to spend forever trying to figure it out because we can probably debug it without having to get into the console there. But when you use ECS EC2, you just log into the EC2 instance and connect like you normally would Docker. So here we have our AWS region. So this would be our AWS default region in this case. And I believe that's what it'd be. We'll just do echo down below, make sure that's true. $sign up, $sign, come on. Good. And our cluster is called Crutter. Don't know why my hotkeys have stopped working. It's working. Oh, my caps is on. Sorry. Crutter. And then we need the actual service. So we'll go back over to ECS. And this should have a task. Are we in the task or in the container? Let's go up to Crutter here. And we'll click into tasks. I'll grab the task ARN. Okay. I don't want the whole thing. I just want whatever identifies the task. It's probably this part here. Yeah, it looks like that there. The container we want to get into is called backend Flask. I think that's what we called it. So we'll double check here. If we click into the task, then there's the containers. This one's called backend Flask. That looks right to me. Good. Bin bash, that will get us into shell. We want it to be interactive. Sounds all good to me. Let's see if this works. Right click, copy. I don't trust that it pasted it correctly. We'll go here, hit enter. Sessions Manager plugin not found. Okay, so we do need to install it. So we'll go here. For Windows, I want it for Linux. Where is it for Linux? Can I not install it for Linux, or is it only for Windows? Manually installing the SSH agent for instance for Linux. Install plugin. install it for the CLI. So install it for Windows, install it for OS, install it for Linux. Okay, so we are looking for this command here. So install Sessions Manager for Linux. I believe it's x86-64 that we're on. And so I will copy this curl line in here, and we will paste that in there. Just in case we need to find this later, I'm going to grab this anchor here. Well, we'll make sure it works first, and then I'll do sudo yum install. Can I do sudo yum? Because that's not what we're on. This is for x86. Oh, we want Ubuntu, sorry. So we'll go here. Run command, and we'll hit enter here. And we'll go down below here, and we'll do this. Okay, so it created a symbolic link. Verify the installation was successful. We can go over here and find that out here. Run this command. Was installed successfully. Cool. You can also test it by doing that. Well, we're not connecting it that way. So we'll go back and hit up until we can find that other command here. This one here. The command failed because X command was not enabled on the task, which I thought it was, but I guess we didn't do that when we created it. And we might not be able to actually do it manually, but I thought we could. So I think we're on the right track. What I'm going to do is go back into my documentation here, because I realize that this is kind of hard to find all these pages. And I think I had it somewhere here where I was starting to document how to do this part. So just say like sessions manager. This is for week 6. We want to be week 6 Fargate. Sorry. Week 6. Oh, this is week 6 Fargate. Okay, that's fine. Just want to make sure we're in the right place. I'll go back to the bottom. So we say here, sessions manager, Fargate. Connecting. And so we want this link here. We want this link here. We need to do this, Debian. We need to install it like that. We want to confirm it. Install for Ubuntu. Verify it's working. The other part to this would be the actual command I use to run it. So if we go back over here, it's this command, I guess. So this like connect to the command. Okay, and saying that execute command, we didn't actually run it when we started it. So when we were launching that service, we should have had the option to checkbox it on, but I can't remember if that's even like it's available here. So we go Fargate here. I'm just going to see if I missed that option at all. No, I don't think I am. No. Okay, so I think the thing is that when you run the task, you have to specify that time. So, or at least the task. So we can create the service via the CLI, but we can also run a task, which is something separate. So I first want to go check create service as an option here. So we go create service, AWS CLI here. And I'm just going to check the parameters here for enable execute command. It's right here, see? Because you can do it when you run a task, or you can do it when you run a service. So we go down below here. It determines whether this is true. I don't see that in the interface. Now, it's possible in the old UI that they had it. And this is kind of like the reason why I sometimes like the old UI, because when you do something, it works as you expect it to work. But I'm not even sure if that's true. about creating the service. So I'm just going to go here and see if that option exists. It might. Fargate. No. So I think that we absolutely have to launch it via the CLI. So I'll go ahead and delete this one here, and we'll go back over here. And what we'll do instead is run it as a service via the CLI. So we'll go create service. And I mean, we have this here, but we're not showing that we have that flag. And so we have this file called backend flask serve, which I might have renamed it to service backend flask. So if we go back to journal week 6 here, I'm just gonna have 2 open here because I need to be in week 6, not week 6 Crutter, not the other one here. We'll go back to here, and we will go to week 6 Fargate, and we will go into AWS here. I have the files for launching these as services, service backend flask, service front end. So we'll go into the backend one here, and this is the way we'd manually launch it. So I'll go ahead and copy this, and we will go here and right click. Well, I guess I should have copied the name file first. So grab it like that, and we'll say new file. I'll put that there, and I'll copy the contents over. And so let's look at some of our options here. So right now we're creating the cluster Crutter. We're launching as Fargate. We would say desired ones. We want one task to launch. Enable and manage tags. That means whatever we tag. I think that's for more so EC2, because when we launch it, we want the tags to move over. Like whatever we set. Oh, sorry. Maybe it's like ECS at the cluster level. The tags go onto the tasks. That's probably what it is. But we want this to be enabled. That's the thing that we want here. When we launch an EC2 instance or a Fargate instance, we actually have to specify the network configuration. And so we need to specify the security group and the subnets. So the security group is whatever we had set before, so we can go ahead and go look that up. So I'll go over to EC2 here. And we will go over to security groups on the left-hand side, if we can find it anywhere here. Security groups. Here we go. And so it's this one here. So I want this ID here. I'm going to copy it, and I can paste it. We could have also used the CLI. I'm just not doing it that way. And then we need these 3 subnets. And so I think here, that's what we copied up before here. So we go all the way to the top of our journal. And this is the old one, I think. Yeah, that's the old one. This is the newer journal. I keep losing where I am here. So we'll go to journal here, and we'll go into week 6. And yeah, so we have subnets here. This will go grab all the defaults. It's just faster than going to the VPC and clicking and trying to find them all, which I find kind of frustrating to do. So we'll go up here, and I need a new tab, doesn't matter where. I'll say paste. And so that will output those values. It doesn't know what the default VPC is in this context, so I'll go back here, and I'll just go grab the first one here. This is the VPC one. Hit enter. We'll get back our VPC, and then we'll go grab this one. It will know the next one here. We could also make these bash commands, I guess, if we wanted to, but this is fine. So these are the 3 that we need. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Yours are going to be different. They're not going to be the same as mine, so you have to replace these. I'll go ahead and paste this in. And it's possible that I already have mine set in here, so I'm just going to delete that out because mine are already set to be what they are. We'll go through here, propagate tags as service, so make sure the tags move forward. That's great. Service name, good. Task definition is that, yes. This stuff we don't need right now. So this is what we'll bring back in a second. This is to do a service connect so that we use a service mesh basically. I'm going to go ahead and delete that out. So we will go here, we will hit escape, or sorry, backspace, save that file. And so now we can provision that file. So if we go over to, back over to our journal, and I might need to edit this because I think I changed the name here, but we want to go to create service. Oh, why does the search not work? But we'll go down the bottom here. It's near the bottom for creating the service. Where are you? Here it is. I changed the name here so that they're a little bit nicer. So this one actually is this now. And then this one is going to be service like that. So serve in the back there. So I'll just go ahead. I'm going to copy that so I don't have to go look for it. I'll just commit that there. And so we'll go back over here, and then we will hit enter here and hit it says no such file or directory, whatever. It should be there. I named it that. It could also just be where we are relative. So if I just type in ls, I am in the backend flask. So I got to go back a directory here, and then I'll paste that in again and hit enter. Okay, and so it's deployed the service, and this time it should have that option enabled, that ability to execute the command. Because without that option, we can't do stuff. Now, do we need another permission for execute command? I don't know. I did kind of see it in that article that we pulled up earlier about getting into a Fargate container, but we'll see if we need that. So I'll go back over here, and we'll go to ECS. Okay. And we will go back to the new experience now that I'm getting kind of used to it. And we'll go down below here, and it says that it is active. We'll go to the task. It says that it is running. The health status is unknown. Okay, so we'll click into here, and that is the task ID. So I'll go back over here, and we want to grab basically that command that allows us to shell in and see if it works now. So it is task. Oh, I didn't mean to do the whole thing here. Okay, I'll scroll down here for a second because we don't need the whole ARN. We just need this part. At least that's what they were showing me before. So I'll go ahead and grab this here. I'll save this. And I'm just going to put this somewhere here for a second. I guess we already have it here. And so I just need this here. I don't think we need the full ARN. Not that it worked before. And then what we'll do is copy this like this, hit paste, hit enter. And fingers crossed. We're in our container. So there you go. We got in. Cool. ls, so we can see that we are in, if we do pwd, we already started in the backend flash directory, or maybe we're not. Yeah, we are in the directory there. That makes sense, clear. And so if we do ls, we can see that we have a bin directory. So if I do period bin, and then do flask, and then do a health check, it should check if it's running. It says the server is running. So our health check clearly is there, but why is it not executing? Why is it not showing that our health check is working? And that is something that is a bit disconcerting to me, because that should be running because we specified it in our task definition. So let's double check our task definition and see what's going on there. So in here, do we have our health check? We do. So it should just work. And it's not showing healthy. Weird. Let me go back here. Oh, it's showing healthy now. Why? Why is it showing healthy now? So maybe before it was a fluke and it just didn't show that it was healthy, but it's healthy now. So that's an okay indicator, but we had to shell in anyway. So now we know how to get into our ECS instance when we need it. If we want to make this a bit more convenient, I guess we can make a bin script for this. And so I'll make a new one right now. I didn't make one before, but I figured, hey, let's go ahead and do that. And probably in our Git pod YAML file, I probably want to have these things installed so I don't have to constantly look for them. So in our Git pod YAML, where are you? I'll go down below here, and we will add another one here for ECS. Paste. Fargate. It's technically we're doing this for Sessions Manager, but whatever. We'll go down all the way to the bottom here, and we'll go grab these two. Okay. I'll go ahead and paste that in. And that's actually all we need for those. So we will go and indent that in. I'm going to put it in the before. If you put it in the init, that won't be there when you restart your environment, and you might not like that. So we'll do that. And then I guess it would be nice just to cd into the backend Flash directory so that it's already where we need it to be. And so in here, we want to run, or we want a new one here. I'm going to call this one a new folder. And this is SSM for Simple Systems Manager. If you don't like it, tough luck. And we'll say new file and connect to service. And we will go to that scratchpad we have here. And I will paste that on in here. And I will go ahead and close this. Whoops. Don't save. I mean, we could call it Fargate, because then if we want to look up other Fargate tasks, we can do that, or even ECS. Just say ECS, actually. I've decided to change it to that. And it is an ECS command still, so that still makes sense. AWS default region, CRUD, and so this is where we want to take the input for that. Let's see if we can find a script where we've done this before, where we've taken input. Probably this one we have, so we'll grab this here. And then what we want to get is that task value. So, and it has to have one set. So I need to check it whether it's set or not. So I'm sure I have a bash script where we check for a second parameter. Where do we do this? I know we did this somewhere. Here. Okay, great. It's this Z command we want. So I grabbed this from our drop, and so we'll just paste that in here. And so the idea is we want our task ID. Paste. And so in here, this would be bin ECS connect to service, like that. And then we could take this task ID and put this here. We probably also want the container, which container we want to connect to, because there could be more than one, right? And so this would just be $2. No container name provided. And so here this would be backend Flask, like that. Probably should put it in both. Okay, we'll scroll back over to the left here. We will go ahead and set this as container name. Change that to a 2. We'll go down below and we will set the container name there. And so that should be our command to get in. We also might want to list our tasks. Again, this is stuff that I'm coming up as we do this. I didn't even plan this before. It was CLI ECS, just to make our lives easier. And so what I want to do is list out tasks. Lists, tasks. Well, per service, there's that. I mean, it's not like we're going to have a lot of these. I'm just trying to think, like, this is a generic one, connect to service. So that passes in the container name and the task ID. I don't know. We could do more work here. I don't know if it's something we want to do is to put more of these in here. Because like, don't have a container instance. Ugh. I wonder if I can just run this in here and see what happens. I'll just type exit. ECS list, AWS ECS list tasks. Cluster is going to be CRUD. Can that just do that? Oh, it does. That's nice. Okay. So it does list out a taskbar in there, but that isn't going to help us too much. I mean, like, it does in the sense that I can go ahead and grab this like this. And say bin dot, where am I right now? pwd, back in Flask. So we'd say bin, we'll have to chmod that file first, I think. Bin ECS connect to service. And so I can say bin ECS connect to service, and then I paste in that, and I say back in Flask like that. And so that should connect to it. Yeah, there we go. Unable to start the session because the container doesn't exist. Specify a valid container. What do you mean? What do you mean that's not valid? Let's go back and hit up again. Let's just echo these two out. So we'll just say container name, container name, task ID, task ID, and we'll hit up again. Whoops. Just making sure I spelled those right. Back end Flask, this thing here. Back end Flask. This value here, right? That's the same. Yeah. So what's wrong with my script? Nothing, right? My script is flawless. Oh, we have a $sign missing. I guess it's not flawless. We'll hit enter here. And so now we can connect to our session, which is nice. So this will make debugging a lot easier. Again, we could go a little bit farther and like try to pull the task name or service, the first service task name, and narrow this down, but I don't want to do that right now. This is good enough, I suppose. And so what I want to do now is, well, we have a service running. Let's see if we can actually see something from it. So we have backend Flask here, and it has a public IP address. And I don't know if we needed to have port 80 open or 4567. So we'll do this. And I can't see anything. Okay, great. So probably this is running on 4567. Let's go double check. Is it though? The reason I get confused is because like when you use things like GCP Google Cloud Run, everything's on port 80 by default, or a default port of whatever they decide it to be. Docker label and host ports, we don't set those. 4567 to 4567. So based on this, it looks like it's actually going to be here. So our rule for a security group should have been 4567 and not port 80. Okay, so that makes that more clear. We'll go over here. We'll go over to our security group, which is under our service. So if we click into our service and go over to configuration and tasks, there should be a security group somewhere here. Or maybe it's at the task level. Well, wherever it is, I can't seem to find it there. I'll just go over to EC2, and because there's not that many security groups in there, and we named it pretty well, so we should be able to find it no problem. So we'll go over to EC2 here. And on the left-hand side, we'll go into service group or security groups. And here we have one for this one here. I'll go ahead and edit it. And instead of being port 80, we really want this to be 4567. I think it'll make us delete the old one. This is how it works. We'll say from anywhere. And I don't need to put a description for that. It's pretty obvious where that's going. So we will go back over to our app here under service. Click into it. And we're just looking for that dedicated IP address. And by the way, like I haven't shown this, but if we go over to EC2, we look at Elastic IPs, you can see that there is, oh, not Elastic IPs, network interfaces. You can see our ENIs. And so these are attached to stuff. If we go over here, we can see that based on the description, there should be one here for ECS. So this is for our post-confirmation one. You wouldn't have as many as I would, but the one would probably be this one here because it says ECS in it. And then it has this thing, so that might be the service or whatever that value is. And so I know that that's what that is that's for for the one that we have there. And so you can see the security group. So I definitely know that's the one that's attached. So anyway, we will go back over to ECS. And we were just looking for that IP address. We might have been able to get it through. No, I don't think we could be able to get it through here, would we? Yes, we would actually, because it's right here. So if we did that, I wonder if that just works. 4567. Looks good. Not found is good. That's what we want. Because if we go API activities and we go home. Oh, well, that's not going to work. We need a health check. Sorry. Health check. Here. We get a health check. So that ENI has the public IP address, but you know, you can get it in wherever it is here. I'm always forgetting where stuff is. So if we go to services here and we go to tasks, it's right here. Might be nice for us to write some AWS CLI commands. We might do it, but I'm just going to put that off as long as I can because I'm just lazy today. So we noticed that when we did API activities home, it hung. And the reason why it hung is because it probably doesn't have a connection to RDS. So we'll log into here. And remember that we created that other CLI or that other bash command for testing under here for RDS. So we go bin RDS and, or sorry, DB, not RDS. And this one was test. And it's going to say attempting connection. It's going to time out. It's not going to work. And the reason why is that we have to make sure that our security group has access to the RDS instance. So what we're going to do is go over to RDS. And actually, we don't even have to do it that way. We can just go over to EC2, which we probably still have open over here on the left-hand side. And we're going to make our way over to security groups. And over here, there should be a security group for the RDS instance. And I believe that the RDS instance is using the default one. If it was using something else, we would have saw it here. We probably should have created our own security group for our RDS instance. That's something we can fix when we do CloudFormation. I'm going to go and edit the inbound rules. So in here, you can see that Gitpod has access to Postgres, and we're seeing a lot of Postgres stuff here. So this clearly is the stuff that has to deal with Postgres. I know this one is for Gitpod. This one is for what? I don't know what this one is for. This one could be for something. So I'm going to leave it alone. And that's why you should always name these things as best as you can, or have your stuff managed, your infrastructure managed by CloudFormation. And so we want Postgres here. And we're going to give this access to a security group. And this is going to be for the service security group. And we'll just say services ECS. Service or CRUD services. I don't think I have to name them all in caps. I always do that though. It used to be all in caps, I think. And so that should get us access. If we go back here, we'll just stop this connection. It's never going to go anywhere. We'll try it again. And now it has an established connection. So that's going to really save you a lot of time. Probably if we had tracing and X-ray set up, this would also give us some debugging information. I really wish that we find time to instrument everything and visualize it. But anyway, so that is now established. So if we go back over to here and we try API activities, home, activities, I'm getting data back. So I'm using production data. Now, this thing is coming raw in here, and there's really no protection. Anyone can hit this endpoint. So, you know, that's not the best thing because you want your APIs to be protected, but this does work. And so we are one step closer to getting to something working. So that is that. Now, the other thing that we can do is set this up to use Service Connect. So that's something else we'll do. We'll just do this manually through the UI here, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to delete the service. We'll just force delete it to bring it down. And I'm just going to wait till this task is done running. We could probably just stop it here. Great. And so what we'll do is go to service here and create a new service. We'll go to Fargate. And we're just going to manually select all this stuff. Backend 10, backend Flask, because I just want to make a I want to just show you something. We are going to launch one through here. So what I'm talking about is this turn on service connect option. So if you go here, we have client and client server. So connects to other services in the namespace, provides endpoints for this service, and connects to other services in the namespace. I like that option. That sounds a lot better. I can't best describe to you how these are, but this one is better because it is. We're choosing the namespace we set up for Cloud Map earlier. We'll have our port mappings. And so here I'd choose backend Flask. For this, I'd choose backend Flask. Discovery namespace. I don't know what to put here, so I'm going to put backend Flask. Maybe that's wrong, but I'm going to put it in there anyway. I'm going to put 4567. Okay. And the port alias is based on what we set as our port alias for over here. So if we go to our, is it in our task definition, I believe? Here. It's how it knows how to map to this one here. Okay. And then you can change the port. So even though this one's 4567, I imagine that you could change this to whatever you want. And then that way you can access it anywhere. And then this will be crutter.backendflask. So crutter or backendflask.crutter for us to access it. This DNS thing, I'm not 100% sure what it does, but I'm going to match it here for that. Notice it says configurations for service connect logs. So it probably wants to create logs over here. We can give it access, and I do believe it already does, because we did say that access, so I don't think that's going to fail. For networking, this is all fine, but make sure that you are using the existing security group or we're going to have some trouble. We'll go ahead and create this, and hopefully it does not fail on the CloudWatch logs. Also, another thing is that when you launch these services, it actually sets up a CloudFormation template when it does it. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes I have to go here and this fails, it rolls back and I have to delete it. So here it actually is setting up the service. So that's all it's doing, right? But we'll go back over to our Elastic Container Service and we're going to see if it passes. So I'm going to click in here and we'll scroll on down and I'll go here and when in progress. So no failures yet. We go to deployment events and see if there's anything interesting over here. Nothing of interest. Good. I just want this to succeed. So I'll be back in a second whether it succeeds or not. Okay. So it appears that it has worked. Okay, so that is in good shape. We'll go back over to services. And what I want you to do is click into this and then notice, maybe we have to click into the task as well, I'm not sure. Configuration and tasks. Notice here that it says Service Connect using backend Flask. This is its ARN, which is not related to that. I don't know why I said that. But over here you can see like the Service Connect services over here. If we go into namespaces, we click into here. You can see that we have backend Flask Crutter. We'll go over to Cloud Map as well. This is going to make a lot more sense if we remap our endpoint, connection, and I think that's something I want to do to make clear as to how this works. But you can see here you can only do API only calls. It's in the Crutter backend Flask namespace. If this doesn't make sense right now, don't worry, it will. But I wanted to show you this in isolate to show you that it's not going to affect anything when you create it. So what we can do now is go and tear this down. So we'll go back to ECS here. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. Okay. And then I want to go back over to here, and in our task definition, or maybe it was our create service, we had removed some of that code, and I want to put that code back in. So if we go into our backend here, we had removed some code. I think it was in that one, and so it should be in this Fargate one. If I go all the way to the top and we go out of the journal here into AWS and into our task definitions, backend Flask. So maybe it was not in our backend, our task definitions, it's the JSON when we launched the service. That's right. And so if we go down below here, there's this Service Connect stuff. So I want to make sure that this is in here because we want to make sure that's set up so we can take advantage of that. I'll go back over here and we'll go into our JSON. And so we'll put that back in. So this should be the same as here, I believe. And I'll paste that in. And I'll put a parenthesis there. I'll double check. I mean, it's the last one, but yeah, the indentation's right. So this is going to work no problem. So what we'll do is go back here. And this one's all jammed up. That's totally fine. So we want to go ahead and create that service again. So I'll go back over to our docs here in our journal into week 6. We could also create aliases and an alias file for AWS CLI. I don't know why we haven't been doing that. I guess I just don't feel like doing it because bash scripts are so easy. But anyway, so we will go ahead and run this again. And we have that additional stuff. And so we just want to make sure that it works with this configuration. So nothing fancy here. I'm just going to go back to the cluster CRUD services here, and we're going to wait for this to finish. Okay, so when this is good and green, I'll be back here. If it fails, we'll take a look into it. All right, so it looks like it's green, so we're in good shape. Still says it's in progress. I'm surprised it's not done. We'll click into it. It's active. We'll check the configurations and tasks. We'll go down below here. I don't see a task. Yes, it is. It's healthy. It's in good shape. Let's make sure that we can still access it. We'll go click into it. I'm going to go grab that public IP address. We'll paste that in there. And we'll do 4567. And we get the not found. So I know that means it's working because if we go API health check, we are in good shape. So we're getting somewhere. We need to do the front end. We got the back end. We need to do the front end. We still don't have a load balancer, but we will get to that in a moment. Well, I'm just trying to decide here because if we don't have the load balancer, we don't have an easy way to route traffic to the other one because like if we have IP addresses and we deploy them, I guess we could hard code the IP addresses in, but that's not great. I'd rather rely on the load balancer's DNS host name. And I guess in that sense, we don't really need a custom domain, but we kind of do for setting up actually we do for HTTPS, I believe. But what we'll do is we'll go set up a load balancer. I did not write any CLI commands for this. I suppose I could have, but I didn't. And so we're just going to go ahead and set up a load balancer the old-fashioned way via the console. So I apologize, but that's how we're going to do it. So that's under EC2. Load balancers aren't too hard. So we're going to go down here and we're going to create ourselves a load balancer. We have 3 kinds, ALB, NLB, GLB. These are the 2 that I'm used to using. ALB is for web applications when you want to deal with HTTPS requests. NLB is when you are working at a lower level with UDP and TCP. The thing is that if we were doing this tutorial or this bootcamp 6 months ago, we would have been using an NLB because if we wanted to use Cloud Map and App Mesh, it needed an NLB. It couldn't work with an ALB. But whatever they're doing under the hood with Service Connect, they made it so you can use ALB, which is a lot nicer and gives you a lot more controls because App Mesh gives you basically no controls. So anyway, what we'll do is go ahead and create an ALB, Application Load Balancer. I'm going to call this one CRUD ALB. I know it's going so darn slow here. We want it to face the internet. IPv4 is good. It's going to be in the default one. We're going to map it to all 3 of these subnets. Okay, we're going to need a new security group. So I'm just going to take this one off here. I'll create a new one and we will call this one CRUD ALB SG. I'm going to copy it in the name here. I know what that does. For the inbound rules, we want to allow access to the internet. So HTTP is one, HTTPS is the other one, and this is from anywhere because this is going to go out to the internet. Now, if you want to keep this private because we have those origins open to everywhere, you could set your own IP address here by dropping that down. I'm leaving it open here so I don't get confused about what I'm doing. We'll go ahead and create that security group. Once we've created that security group, we need its security group ID because we want to permit only the other security group only to allow access through that. So instead of hitting the IP address, we'll have to always go through a load balancer, which is what we should do. By the way, once we submit the load balancer, that thing's going to cost $15 a month. If you're on free tier, it's going to cost you $0 for the first year. Just consider that. Going to go ahead and add an inbound rule. We're going to allow access for the security group. I guess we didn't have to copy the IP address. We could have just scrolled down here and found it as well. But sometimes it's easier to do that and just paste it in. And we're going to allow access for, I'm trying to think here, because here it's 4567 to the internet. So this one's going to be 4567 for the security group. We'll just say Crutter. We'll just say Crutter ALB. So we know what that's for. We'll delete that one. So now only through the load balancer can we gain access. So that's set up. The next thing we need is a target group. So we'll create a target group here. And, oh, well, actually, we didn't even finish creating our stuff over here. So we'll refresh here for our load balancer. And now we'll choose the ALB. We'll remove the default one. We do not want the default one. And so here we have HTTPS or HTTP, and we want to forward this to a target group, which does not exist. So that's what we're going to do, create a new target group. This has to go to IP addresses because we are using Fargate and we're pointing to an IP address. Same thing if you're using ECS EC2, you'd be using an IP address. So that's what you set for that. I'm going to call this one Crutter. Crutter AL or this backend Flask. And I'll put TG for target group. The protocol we're listening on is port 80. I actually want to listen on 4567, to be honest. Well, no, sorry, this is where we want to listen on. So that's 4567. Sorry, the listener listens on port 80, and then the target group is pointing to whatever the container port we're expecting, which is 4567. So that's right. But I also don't want really to have port 80 on my load balancer, but we'll tackle that in a second. Use the default VPC, that's fine. Our health check is going to be API health check, right? And we know that one works. So we're hoping that passes. I'm going to turn down the threshold to 3 because that'll take forever. Interval is 30 seconds. So this stuff can really make things go slow. So you have to tweak these a bit. We'll go ahead and hit next. And it's trying to register targets. I'm not going to register targets right now. I'm just going to go ahead and create this. Because right now the service needs to be associated with the load balancer. And that's something we'll figure out here in a second. So I'll go back over here. And I want to refresh this here. And I actually want this to be on 4567. When I originally did this, I did it on 80, but I found this is easier to do it this way. And we will have one for the front end, so we can go ahead and just make it now to save us some trouble. And I'll go ahead and just say this one is, we'll add another listener here. And this one will be on port 3000. And then we will go ahead and create another target group here. This will be IP address. This one will listen on 3000. This one will be called Crutter. Front end React JS. IPv4, that's fine. The health check, don't care about the health check really here. It's just going to go here to the default page. We'll set this to 3. Well, we do care where it goes, but I'm just saying that we put more effort in the back end. So this is fine. We'll go ahead and create that target. Nothing's registered to these targets yet. That's totally fine. I'm going to go refresh this. We'll drop this down. We'll choose React here. And so that is good. Global Accelerator would really speed this up. It's really great. We're too expensive. We're not touching that today. We'll go down below here. We can see all of our options. We'll go ahead and create our load balancer. Hopefully it works the first time. No problem. These usually create pretty darn quick. So there is our load balancer. It's provisioning. So we have to give it a little bit of time to get situated. So in our commands there, we need to create a service that also specifies the load balancer. And that's something that I don't have in my over here, because at that time I didn't even do that. I was just manually creating them. So we need to specify that at the time that we create them here on the service backend. So at the time of creation. So we'll have to look that up. So we will just close a few tabs out here because this is getting kind of goofy. And I'm going to just go here and type in AWS CLI create service. Okay. And over here, we will scroll down on the left-hand side. And we can supply here, where is it? This is, how does this command work? CLI JSON input, because we need the structure for this. We could get the skeleton out for this, but I wonder if it'll just tell us. That'd be nice. It doesn't. Print a JSON skeleton for the standard output. So what I'll do is just grab this here. And I don't do this often, but we'll see if it works first time. Because I want to know what I need to write here. So I'll type in AWS ECS create service, and I'll just put this here, and it should generate out the format of the stuff. So this is the structure here that we can use. So I'll go ahead and grab this, and then this way we can just kind of populate the values that we want. So I'll just go here and make a new text file. We'll go ahead and paste this in. Oh, for frick's sakes, come on. Don't be like that. We'll go down below here and, oh geez, it won't let me right click copy. Control C. Just let me paste in this new file. Freaking stupid thing. New file, text file. Why? Okay, I'll just put it down here for a second. Here, and we really shouldn't have any of this stuff in here. I don't know why any of this is here. So in here, there's going to be something for load balancer. So this is what we're looking for, is the load balancer stuff. So that's just all I want here. So I'll go and grab that. We'll go back over here and we'll scroll on up. And I don't think it matters. It just has to be, not in the task definitions, but in here. But we will just put this one line above. We'll paste this in. And so in here, we just have to specify the target group ARN and the load balancer name. I'm going to go over here and just get rid of this stuff. We don't want to have this here. Don't want to make a mess of our README. Plus, I'll penalize you if I see stuff in there I don't want to see. Even if I do it, you definitely should not do it. Just because I do it, you know, it's different rules, I guess. That doesn't make any sense, but that's how I'm doing it. So I'll grab the ARN here for the back end, and we will go ahead and paste that in like that. And then we'll go get the load balancer here. Where's its ARN? Give me your ARN. Where's your ARN? Up here. And we'll go back here, and then we'll paste in that. And then we'll set the backend Flask. And then it'll be up to ECS to make sure that it always adds the target. It'll know how to do that. Container port here is going to be 4567. Okay, so we'll do that, 4567. And so that looks like it should work. We will go back over to ECS. And I'm going to go ahead and go in here, and we will go ahead and delete the service. By the way, if you ever want to know how you can shut, well, I guess you can always just delete these if you're worried about spend, but we'll talk about that in the spend video. There's like a way to set the desired capacity to 0, and then that way you can have these all like set up but not running any compute. But anyway, what we'll do is delete that, and I'm going to go back over to here, and I need this command to provision it again. So we will go ahead and type in clear. We will go ahead and provision that. Target group ARN cannot be specified. You must specify either the load balancer or the target group ARN. So why would there be two? Well, probably if you had a classic load balancer, you would specify the load balancer because that was the only case where you didn't have target groups, which if you notice, we didn't even have the option to select a classic load balancer. So I'll just do the target group, and that probably will resolve that issue. Unable to start the service is still draining. That's because we deleted the old one, but stuff is still sticking around. But I don't see anything here anymore. So we'll try it again. We might have just missed the window that second ago. And we'll hit up, and it still says it's draining. What are you talking about? Okay, well, we'll go back over here. It says draining 1. Can I see where it's draining stuff? Nope. Other than we know it's draining. No, nothing's running. it's draining. So I guess we'll wait a bit till it's done draining. All right, waited a couple minutes. I just kept hitting refresh, and now it says draining is none. So it's done draining. We'll hit enter there, and hopefully that this works no problem. It gives us back the input, or output, and so that is a good indicator. We're going to wait to see if this works. These are not reachable, which totally makes sense. We'll just give it a second, okay? I'm not worried about these ALB. Well, hold on here. Why does it say it's not reachable? The security group for your load balancer does not allow traffic on the listener port. Manage your security groups tab. Oh, you know why? If we go to security group here, we probably actually do have to update this because we set this to be port 80, I think. And that's eventually what this will be. And so for the time being, we're just going to set 456, and this will be just temp for anywhere. And then we'll do this for 3000. Because when we do this later, we'll set up listeners and we'll do it on the APIs as opposed to temp 1, temp 2, as opposed to how we're doing it now. So if we go back over to our load balancer, that complaint shouldn't be there, but we just kind of stumbled upon that, listeners. So no issues anymore wherever that error was. We'll go back over to ECS and we'll see if that runs into an error. So it is becoming active. It says it's active, 1 in progress, no issues. We'll go to deployment events. Sometimes that indicates that something's wrong. We're doing the load balancer stuff, so we'll go there. It is looking at the load balancer here. We have 4, 5, 6, 7, 3000. So I think it's just saying what listener protocols are available, not necessarily the one that it's listening on. But it seems like the load balancer is associated. It is going to use that health check from the load balancer to check. It's showing that it's attached to the correct target group. So if this health check passes, then we'll be in good shape. If it doesn't, it'll just keep shutting it down and starting it up and shutting it down and starting it up. And you'll know that because you'll have to go to, where is it, like configuration tasks, and you'll just see them and you'll go to the stop tasks. And if you click into there, you'll see that information. So if we click into this, and we didn't look at this before, but if we go into logs, we can actually see some health checks. So this 27001 is the health check that's being applied by our container. If you remember before, in our task definition file over here, we set this, where is it here? Health check. So that is that health check. We know it because it's saying 27.1.0.0, like it's local here. And so we're looking for that other health check. So if we refresh, I'm trying to wait till the other one appears from the target group. And that one will look different. We'll know that it's there because it will look different. But I'm not seeing it happen as of yet. So it makes me indicate that this is going to fail. We'll go back over here. It says running, healthy. We'll go back over here. Sometimes it just takes multiple checks here on the target group. So if you go here, it's based on how many healthy checks it has to have before it just considers it done. Forgot to put the TG on the end there. That's okay though. And so we have this. It's going to have to check 3 consecutive times between 30 seconds, right? And it has to receive it in 5 seconds. So it could be that we're just waiting there. And so if we go up to our targets, it says that it's healthy. Well, that's a good indicator. So that's healthy. If we go back over here to our logs, I'm expecting to see it from there. I'm seeing the ones that we set, and this is set every 30 seconds, which is kind of aggressive. But I don't see the ones from the target group. I mean, that's okay because it says it's healthy and that's all I really care about. But when I did this before and I looked at it, I could actually see them here. And by the way, there's more than one container running. We actually have the ECS service connect. And so stuff has to flow through that before it gets to our container. We can actually see that over in CloudWatch logs. That's that proxy that sits in between it that like basically enables our service mesh. I don't think we'd see anything interesting here, but let's go take a look and see if there's anything of interest. So we'll go to our log groups, see how my billing's all over the place. I don't care. No, it's not that expensive, but it's just, I set it like to $1. That's why it's always in the red. But if we go in here, I think it was ECS backend Flask, and we can go to the log groups here, and you can just see stuff in here like shutting down instance, blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. So waiting to drain, things like that. Not human readable to us, but there's stuff going on in there. So what I want to do is just make sure that this is healthy, double check. It is still healthy. That's good. So that means that if that's healthy, that we should be able to read or to access it from the ALB. Now, if we don't, we could also set ALB CloudWatch access logs on here, and that might be useful to do. So I'm going to go here and just paste this in here. So that won't do anything because we got to do it on 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So we'll do this 4, 5, 6, 7. It says 404 not found. That is good. We'll do API activities. Oh, sorry, that doesn't make any sense. We'll do API health check. Health. There we go. So you can see that it is working. It's behind the load balancer. That's going to make our lives a bit easier. I really do think that we should do the ALB logs if we can. You might not want to do this if you're concerned about spend. I don't think it should result in too much spend, but I'm going to turn it on anyway. So there is a place over here where we can go to attributes, and we can go edit, and we can turn on access logs. I just want to see if we can say anything. And so it'll say, okay, create a new bucket. So I'll go here. And I think I made one before for this, but I'll go ahead and delete it and we'll try it again. So I made a bucket here. I'm just going to delete this one. I got to empty the bucket first. Sorry. Let's go ahead and delete this. I hate when it tells you to type things like that. It's so silly. We'll go ahead and delete, empty the bucket. I'll go here and then I'll just delete this bucket. Because, you know, the more information we have, the easier it is for us to debug stuff. And when I was having a lot of issues, I was trying to get this to work so that I could see what was being passed along. So I'm going to create a new bucket, and these have to be unique. So yours might not be the same as mine, but I'm calling mine Crutter ALB access logs. CA Central, it has to be in the same region, this bucket, as CloudWatch to work. Otherwise, it will not work. We do need public access, but we're not using ACLs. We'll leave these two open. That's totally fine. I acknowledge I know what I'm doing. Okay, SSE as default is fine. Everything else is fine. We'll go ahead and create that. So now that we have our group there, we can go, or our bucket, we'll go back over here and we will say, well, we can just click view. This is just going to open another tab. Yeah, that's not very useful. I'll click into here, into the bucket, and we'll go to properties. It's not showing us the iron. That's kind of frustrating. So I can just grab it this way as well, and we can just look at what we have to write. So S3 colon. We can also learn more about like the policy that we have to set here. So here it's going to say log group resource policy. Send logs here because we want to create a bucket policy. Access logs ALB bucket policy. See if we can find that there. Yeah, this was the page I was on before. That's right. So regions available as of 2022 or later. If you're in these regions, it's a little bit different. So I'm before that. So I have to make a bucket policy that looks like this. And we'll go back to our S3 bucket and we'll attach that. So we go to down here to bucket policies. It's permissions, right? Permissions. We'll edit this. We'll paste this in. Here, what we need to do is we need to update this an IP address based on my location. So for me, I'm in Canada Central 1, so I have to grab that. That's AWS's root value there for that the ALB will use. And then in here, we see the ARN, and so it's saying the bucket name. So this is called Crutter access logs. And we can have a prefix in here. I don't want a prefix, so I'm just going to take that out. Okay, so we'll just take this out here, and then we need our account ID. We'll paste that in. And so we should be able to just grab this part, and then I'm just going to save this. It does say something about like the prefix, like you can't name the prefix this. The prefix you must specify must not include AWS logs. We add this portion of the file name starting with AWS logs after the bucket has been created. Okay, so I think that all we have to do here. Thought we were editing this load balancer already. Maybe it was here that we were doing it. Yeah, so we'll just do, it's going to be S3 colon slash slash that. And so that's going to be it. Maybe it was the browse it. Oh, that's how we did it. We just select it like that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save that changes. Access denied for bucket. Please check the S3 permissions. And I remember having this issue quite a bit. We have a double slash in there. That doesn't look right. We'll go here. And I'll just go take out that double slash. We'll hit save changes. We'll try that again. Save changes. Still don't have access. We'll go back here. Crowder. Well, I don't know what it is right now, but we'll come back to this and play around with it later. I'm not concerned about this part at all. I'm just kind of trying to get through a particular part to stop the video because we're getting close to 3 hours here. So we will come back to here. This bucket's not done, but I want to focus on getting the front end integrated now. So now that we deployed the back end, we can do the front end. So let's go ahead and look at our, well, we need a task definition for the front end. So this one's going to be called front end React.js. JSON. And we will go ahead and look for that file there. I'm just going to grab the one that I've prepared in the code here. Should really just leave this tab open. We always seem to need to, right? And we will go into AWS here. And we will go into our task definitions. We will go into our JSON here. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab all this. This one seems a bit light, so I feel like we're going to have to make some adjustments. You probably have to update these with your own values, right? So like these have to get changed. You have to make sure that these get changed, right? So just make sure you change all those. So what I'm missing in here is the load balancer stuff. Or maybe not. Nope, that all looks fine actually. Notice that we're not passing any environment variables in here. The reason why is that we need to do a 2 build step. And we actually talked about this in week 1 where there might have been a case for doing a multi-build step, a multi-stage step for Docker files. And I mean, there was an easier way to do it, but we decided to do a multi-stage because I thought that was a great opportunity for us to learn how to use that. So our task file is there, but let's go take a look at the Docker file for this, and we'll go in the Docker file. And so this is a pretty simple Docker file. We're gonna need one for prod. So we'll go here and say Docker file. And you know what? Jessica said this earlier. She's like, you should create separate ones. And I never made a separate one for prod for Flask, but that's okay. We'll do that at some point. Or not. We'll see. It's like when we need it, we'll do it, okay? We'll go back over here and we'll go into here. And we'll take a look at our front end Docker file prod. And I don't know where I got this. I think I might have just asked ChatGPT to generate this out, and it wasn't the best generated thing out because I remember when it generated out, it gave me like different numbers on stuff when I had to tweak it. But anyway, the idea here is that we are going to use Node, and because we need to compile out the static assets. When we build this app here, we're using this tool called React scripts. And this is great for development, but in production, what you do is you build out the static assets, and it's going to build it into a folder called build in here or static or something. And so then those static assets have to get served up somehow. And so we have to supply it some kind of way of doing that, and we're going to use Nginx for that. So in our Docker prod file, coming back to here, so we say as build for this first step, because all of this stuff is going to build out and then reference in this file, and it's going to get rid of all this stuff and not package it part of the container, so our container is small, multi-build stuff. And so we need to supply it environment variables. And so the way that works, and this is a bit of a headache to figure out, but I did figure it out. If we look for create, be like Docker build here. So what we have to do is pass in build arg, and we're setting the environment variables this way to these ones here. And then we have to, for whatever reason, define arg here so that we can then use this $sign, this reference here, and then we assign them to the environment variables. And so in this part here, it's going to take those environment variables that it needs. We're going to copy the contents of the front-end React app into this temporary place. We're going to do an npm install. We're going to do build. Build's going to dump it to a folder probably called build. Yeah, right there. So I'm going to get ahead of the game here, and I'm just going to go to our get ignore file. I'm going to just say front-end React JS build. And I'm just going to do an asterisk on that. Now I'm just going to commit my stuff for the time being. You please make nice commit messages. I'm not doing that because no one's grading me. I'm grading you. Okay. But you know, if I was doing this for real, I'd be committing along the way and making sure everything is very tight. But you know, I'm just trying to keep pace here for the boot camp. So anyway, the idea is that it's going to build. It's going to make that folder, and then this next part, it's going to start over again. It's going to use Nginx as the base image. We're going to reference from up here. So we're saying from build, grab from the front-end React build folder, and then dump it into user share Nginx HTML, which is the default part here. And then we're going to copy over an Nginx file and specify it there, and then we're going to expose the port. So we need an Nginx file in here as well, nginx.conf. If you don't know what Nginx is, go ask ChatGPT. It's a reverse proxy. It can be used as a lightweight web server. We only just serve up static files, so it's perfect. It's lightweight. It's the perfect thing for us to use. We'll go down below here. We're going to go ahead and copy the contents of this file. We'll go back. We'll paste it in. And so I think I asked ChatGPT for this file as well. And we're going to run a single process as a container. You always only run a single process. So one task or one container per process. The only thing that I added here was this part here. So here we'll serve up the index.html file, which that will be in the build directory. And so what this does is when you enter in URLs, so let's say you do like front end or whatever, and you hit refresh, it's going to say 404, but this will route all them over here. And so that's what that location one is for. Okay. So now that we've added that file, what we need to do is go ahead and just do a dry build to see if it works. All right, so what was I saying? I paused and I don't remember what I was doing. But yeah, so this is our Nginx file and it is configured. And yeah, so we have that file in place. And we needed that for our Docker file prod. So we were going to go build this because we should see how it builds before we push our container. So we'll go, we'll just clear this out here for a second. And we'll cd into the front end. And we'll do a Docker, no, not Docker. What am I talking about? npm build, run build. Okay. And we'll build that. And so we want to see the outputs of that content. Okay, so we'll give it a second. And one other thing that we didn't check, which while we're waiting for that to build, doesn't take that long to build, I just wanted to show you that we cannot access the website via the IP address anymore, which is not what we want to do because that is not a great way to access our app. We always want to go through the load balancer for security purposes. But if we go over to our configuration tasks and we go down to here and we go into here and then we go into here and we go into 4, 5, 6, 7, you can see that it will not complete because we tell it only through the load balancer. And that is a good thing. We want that. But when we're doing development, we can, you know, be relaxed on that. So here it's creating the optimized build script. It's taking a while, but if you go in here, you can see all the stuff dumping out. It's going to have that index.html file in there. And in there, there'll be another folder in here called static. So we have a couple errors here. And so this is actually good that we ran it. So these didn't show up in development, but they definitely show up when you're building up production. And so we have some set cognito errors, confirmation page, recover page. So those are a couple that we need to update. And so I'm going to do this. I'm going to expand this, and I'm going to go into pages. I'm going to go into recover. And I'm going to look for where these were. It said recover, right? Confirmation page, recover page. There it is. So that's an old one. It shouldn't do that anymore, right? We'll paste that in. We'll go here. I'll do npm run build. And so this should pass now, and if it is, then our build is successful. We can also kind of debug it or like inspect it to see if the variables are in there. And it's not a bad thing to, well, it depends. So some people say don't have your environment variables in your images. This is a front end, so I think it's kind of okay. And there's nothing that is like super sensitive that users would not be able to be exposed to because it's in our website. So it's not a big deal. So that built, and it looks like we didn't run into any issues. There are some warnings. We'll ignore them. So now that that has built successfully, we want to make sure that it's not committing any of that stuff. We'll just fix those changes. WIP. Make good commit messages. Don't do WIP like I'm doing. I'm just doing this because I'm doing this all in one take, and so I just want to make sure I don't lose anything as I'm doing this in a rapid fire manner. Okay, so we have that one. We need to build this and push this. So we'll go over here, and so you'll see that we have to do all these build args and pass them along. This is going to be different. Make sure you set these to what these are for you. You get those out of your Docker Compose file, right? Go to your Docker Compose file. Please don't copy and paste, so you'll get errors. But grab the ones that are relevant to you. You can even set them as environment variables if you want and then pass them along. I'm going to go ahead and build this. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'll say paste, enter. I'm going to go check ECR to see if we created the other one. I can't remember if we did or not, like for the front end. And we don't have it. So what I'll do is while this is building, I'm going to go get the other command to build the front end repo. So we'll do that. And then I will go here. That's built. And so we'll set that environment variable. So we have that. I guess we'll have to do it in the right context though. We can't just do it over there. So we'll just give that a second. While we're waiting, we'll just make sure we grab the login here and just make sure we're logged in on the right tab here, okay? Now, we'll wait for it to finish building. Okay, I'll be back in a second. All right, so that took a while, but hey, it built. And so what we can do is go ahead and push that. So I'm gonna go back over to here. And we are gonna go down to this, to that, paste it in. Well, yeah, so we have that front end there, and then we can go ahead and push that. Kaboom. Oh, well, that's not the push, that's the tagging. And then we'll push it. Okay, if we want to test this locally, we probably should actually before we deploy it, because that'd probably be a good idea. What we can do is just conditionally launch. I know we pushed it already, but let's just make sure that works. So I'm gonna run the backend flash the DB. Unless it's already running, that'd be great if it was. Save me some trouble. They are not, so I'll just say okay here. We'll get those running there. And while that is going on, what I'm going to do is launch the front end. And this way we can just test to make sure, because it saves us so much time if we make sure these things work beforehand. And we'll run this locally, and if it works with that, then we should be in good shape. So this one is pulling up with no issue. We'll go inspect it. And what I'm looking for is any kind of errors that would indicate that those things are gone. Another thing we can do is even check the JavaScript. So if we go to the network tab here or sources, static, JS, we should be able to see some stuff in here. I'm just trying to think where these would get set, where we would see them. Well, we can see here that they're being set. So like, see how it's trying to hit this? And this is an environment variable that is baked into our thing. So even though we didn't get a connection between this and that, that's totally fine. It's just the fact that there's a value there. And so I know that that front end is there. We could get it working if we wanted to, because it just started spinning up. But I don't care. I just wanted to see that there was some kind of value. So what you could do is search for some of the values in the entire JavaScript file. I didn't exactly find that, but that's totally fine. But let's go ahead and get to deploying that thing. So we need our task definition first. So we'll go up to AWS. We'll check our task definitions. We have our front-end React. We just did this, right? That looks good to me. We're going to need our other service one here. Now, I don't know if I even did that one when I was working on this. Let's take a look. See what we got. And we'll go into here. And we'll go to AWS. We'll go to JSON. And wow, you do have a front-end one. Let's take a look at it. I'll copy that. And I'm going to call this new file, service front-end, React, JS, JSON. Okay, and so again, you got to update these with your relevant stuff. I think my security group is probably different from the last time I did it, so I'm going to copy that and paste that on in here. And then these are going to be your subnets, so I showed you how to do that before. Go figure that out. And that looks fine. This all looks fine. Do we have in this our Service Connect? Do we have Service Connect in here? We do. That's good. Is there anything else that I put in here extra? Oh, the load balancer. Okay, so we'll grab that, and then we'll go up here. It doesn't matter where, as long as we get it in there. And we'll paste it in. And so we want the load balancer, but this time this is 3000, and this is going to target a different place. So we will go up to dun, 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 dun. We'll go do that, and so that will be there. We'll have to make sure this is front end React.js. Hopefully all this stuff is named correctly. We can double check this. We'll check our task definition. I'm just double checking because sometimes I don't put the JS on the end there by accident. And the container name is front end React.js. That's good. That looks good to me. So that all looks like it's correct. So what we'll do is go back over here. And we will go over, well, we could launch our service. Now, right away, we're going to have a CORS issue because we're not specifying the right URL. When we built this here, where is it? When we built this, I'm just trying to get ahead of a problem so we don't have to like circle back and be like, oh, look at this thing we learned. When we did, which command is it here? I gotta go back to the journal, I lost it. Create service. Where are you? It was when we built out the, when we compiled the Docker build. Docker build, this one here. We are using this as our backend URL, but the backend URL is not going to be that. It's actually going to be the load balancer. So that's what we need to grab. So we need to go and find out our load balancer DNS hostname here, which is that. And we need to then rebuild this the proper way. So I'm going to just, I need a scratch pad here. I'm just going to put this below here. I'm just going to paste this in for the second. And I'm going to go and grab this one more time. And I know this was really slow, but I guess we'll have to do it again and then repush because I forgot. And so I'll just expand that there. Go ahead and cut that. And then we're going to go here and just replace this part. I think it's HTTP, not HTTPS, because we're going to need our SSL certificate for that, or our TLS certificate, whatever it's called. And so that looks correct to me. This is supposed to have 4, 5, 6, 7 on it. Yeah, okay. And so now that's what we want. I'm going to go ahead and rebuild that. Okay. Kill that there. And we'll paste this in and we will rebuild. Copy, hit enter, and we'll rebuild. I'll be back here in a second when it's done building. Hopefully be faster because it'll cache some layers. Be back in a second. All right, after waiting a while, it looks like it is finished. That took a while. And I'm going to go and push this again. So we will go here. And we'll push that. And then we'll go here. I don't think we had to tag it twice, but I probably did. And we'll push it again. And so now that'll be the latest one that is pushed. And so we can go, and our task definition was good. Our service was good. Now we can go ahead and create it. And that's just going to save us seeing the cores issue and just not having to deal with it, which is nice. So looking for create service. I'll go ahead and copy this, paste that in. Window's too small. Why is it too small? Let's drag it up. It doesn't like something. Let's hit enter and see what it complains about. Unable to load param file. No such file or directory. Service frontend React.js JSON. I got to go up the directory. That's why. We got to create our task definition. Fair enough. I think it's like register. Doesn't like something in there now. Unable to load param file, no such file directory. It's because I probably spelled definitions wrong. Definitions. Oh, how do you spell that? I apologize, but you'll just have to deal with that. Rename, so I can copy it, hit up. Enter. No such file. Okay, what am I doing wrong here? Service. Oh, this one has service in front of it. Service. Now what's wrong? Are you kidding me? AWS. Oh, it has task twice. Give me a break. Enter. Now what? Are you freaking driving me crazy? Okay, AWS, JSON, service, just autocomplete for the love of me. Okay, can I just autocomplete it here? That'd be nice. No, I can't. JSON, I'm probably missing JSON. Yep, I am. Okay, so we'll go here. Enter. You tell me it doesn't exist, I'm gonna lose it. Okay. File, AWS, JSON. Oh, it is called front end. Sorry, it's because I got mixed up between the two files. Enter. I'm gonna like lose it. Okay, I just want to go eat dinner, and I'm so hungry that I cannot think straight. Okay, let me copy this out line by line because I do not want to get this wrong. AWS. JSON. Task definition. Front-end React JSON. Great, thank you. We'll put this in the front. File, // sorry. Cut this out, copy it, I don't care. We'll hit up. I will back out. I will paste this in. This better frickin' work. Enter. What? Stop telling me it doesn't exist. It's right here. It is right here. Am I crazy? I must be crazy because it's right there and I can't see it. LS, AWS, task definitions, JSON. Oh, it's not in the JSON. Oh, for frick's sakes. I can only imagine people watching me and be like, Andrew, you're crazy. And it is JSON. You know, I thought this directory was always in the JSON directory, but apparently it's not. Okay, so I'll just take this part out. Maddening how many times I got that wrong. Okay. This is what happens when you're hungry. I'm going to CD into it. I'm just going to, well, do you know why? It's because I'm in the directory. That's why. That's the reason why. Hit enter. Great. Thank you. Not my fault. Yes, it's my fault. I don't care. So we've registered that task. We'll go ahead and create this service. That service created. Let's just hope it works the first time around. We don't have to do nothing. I'm going to go make my way over to ECS. I'm going to go see what is happening. We're going to go here. We see this one is trying to deploy. Helps to go to deployment events and see if there are any issues. No issues as of yet. We can go to logs. We didn't set a container. We did not set a health check at the container level because I couldn't think of a way to do that. And it's okay. We'll just rely on load balancers. Target groups. Front end. Health checks. Targets. No targets registered. Okay. We'll go back to here. Refresh. Still deploying. So, I'm going to double check just while that's going. I just want to see if I made any mistakes here proactively for my load balancer. I think we defined that in the service, right? Up here? 3000. Okay, so it should. Front-end React, yeah. It should register it. Primary, good. Refresh. Haha. Please be healthy. Please be healthy. I'll be back here in a little bit. It'll take like a minute or two to check. No, it's unhealthy. Why? Why is it unhealthy? Oh, I thought we were almost there. I thought we almost had it. Let's take a look here. Port 3000 isn't healthy. Logs. Docker endpoint sh. Because this is being served up by Nginx, it's a lot, you don't get as much information out of here, unless this is serving the wrong one. Let's go to React, front-end React here. So, should be fine. The thing is that if it's associated with this, it'll just keep on shutting down over and over and over and over again. We'll have to come back to this, okay? I'm going to stop the video here. We'll come back to this one. I'm sure we will solve it when I have eaten some food. I'm going to delete this service. We're going to have to launch it and shell into it and see what the problem is, okay? So see you back in the next video.